Thank you.
Okay,
We
you are
are
on live.
live now. I'm going to start after lunch. Thank you and welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Bais Ahmed, hosting the conference today, and it is being co-hosted by UCL, IRDR, and Center for Genocide Studies at the University of Dhaka. Now, I would like to welcome Professor Imtiaz Ahmed to moderate the panel discussion on International Court of Justice and justice issues. But before that, I want to quickly introduce Professor Imtiaz. He has been already introduced in the previous session, but Professor Imtiaz works in the Department of International Relations, and he is also the founding director of Center for Genocide Studies at the University of Dhaka. He has authored, co-authored, and edited around in total 26 books on different issues related to peace and conflict, international relations, genocide and mass violence, women and politics. And his forthcoming book is on civil society, state, and democratic futures in Bangladesh. He has almost 3 decades of experience working with the Rohingya crisis, and almost everyone working in this field knows Professor Imtiaz. We're really honored to have him, and I would welcome Professor Imtiaz to start moderating the session on ICJ. Thank you. It's over to you,
Th-
Professor Imtiaz.
thank you, Bias. We absolutely have an extraordinary lineup today in this particular session. Very important people from 3 different areas. We have His Excellency Benoit Prefontaine, the High Commissioner of Canada in Bangladesh. Canada has already been flagged in the discussion yesterday and today, and for the right reason, given the support that Canada has been from the day one, support to the Rohingyas, including the support to the ICJ process of Gambia. So I think it's a pleasure to have the High Commissioner today and to hear him about the next steps, or what our expectations would be, and what the international community need to do, since this is an issue that I think is not limited to Bangladesh and Myanmar at all. It's a global issue, and it's the issue of justice. We also have the right person. We have the legal person, Arsalan Suleiman, the consul in Folly Hogs International Litigation and Arbitration Practice. And he is the person who would know uh, absolutely the details of what is going on in the ICJ, given his role, and the team that he works with is also extraordinary. So, Arsalan, welcome. And I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to know your views about the ICJ process and the issue of justice. And we have the third speaker, Mr. Shahidul Haq, and at the right time, Mr. Haq, the former, well, we have him here as a senior fellow of North South University, but he's known as the former foreign secretary, but known who has really been behind working uh, uh, for several years. Well, definitely right after this crisis started, uh, on the Rohingya issue, and he's someone who's an insider. Now that as he's a little bit of an outsider, I'm sure he will also speak his mind, which would help others to know as to what has happened, and where we need to go. So, as I said, we have 3 extraordinary speakers. Now, with that short intro, let me now welcome His Excellency Mr. Benoit Prefontaine, to give his remarks. Mr. Pifonti, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Imtiaz. And first of all, thank you so much for including me in this panel. I feel a bit outgunned. I'm a career diplomat, so no legal credentials, not much to go by for such a topic. And I look at the background of some of you full of books, and we can see the scholarly knowledge flowing out from your video. But I am glad to be here because I think this is such a crucial part of responding to the Rohingya crisis. So as you pointed out, I arrived here in the early days, in early September 2017, while the Rohingya were still flowing across the border. And I've been, I have to say, this has been the priority of my first 3.5 years of my assignment here in Bangladesh. I'd like to start by saying a few words on accountability. So Canada's position on the gross violations and abuses of human rights in Myanmar is firm and clear and has always been. So we have been leading advocates in the international fora for accountability for the Rohingya crisis all the way since August 2017. Concerted cooperation and coordination with our international partners is crucial, and it has significantly advanced international accountability processes to date. If it were just me or my government trying to do something by ourselves, it would not amount to much. The key is to try to mobilize as many players as possible. To name a few, we've played a key role in the passing of several resolutions before the General Assembly of the UN and the Human Rights Council. We've worked to establish the independent, the IIMM, Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar. We continue to support the unprecedented investigation underway by the International Criminal Court to assess the crime of forced deportation and to call for the United Nations Security Council to refer the situation to the International Criminal Court. As was mentioned during the previous panel, I was listening before the lunch break, and it featured several Rohingya activists holding Myanmar accountable, serves many useful purposes, not only to put pressure on Myanmar. One of, as a diplomat, I know that one of the key elements of all this is the necessity to keep the Rohingya crisis in the international spotlight. This is vital to mobilize as many countries and donors also as possible towards helping both the Rohingya and Bangladesh. So focusing on accountability is extremely important as years go by, and we have to do everything we can to keep this top of mind for the general public in as many countries as possible. So I'll say a few words now on the two processes as I understand them. First of all, since 2017, and I think Shahidul Haq would remember this, Canada has been encouraging Bangladesh efforts in this area, and we have applauded their decision to support both the ICC and ICJ processes. I would also like to acknowledge Bangladesh's recent announcement of a US $500,000 contribution for the Gambia legal team. This is important, and I'm hoping more will be doing the same. A few months ago, as most of you are probably aware, Canada has announced its intention to intervene jointly with the Netherlands in the Gambia's case against Myanmar. So this is the case concerning alleged violations of the Genocide Convention, more specifically. Canada is coordinating closely with the Netherlands on the next steps regarding our intervention. And Arsalan will correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that we will intervene after both Bangladesh and Myanmar have submitted their memorials. So in the case of Bangladesh, that was done in October, and Myanmar will probably or possibly not submit their memorial until July 2021. So we still have several months to decide the specific scope of our intervention. And as of now, it's not yet determined. However, we have already announced that we intend to pay special attention to crimes related to sexual and gender-based violence, including rape. So this is an area in which we will definitely intervene. So Canada's decision to intervene aligns with both our strategy to respond to the Rohingya crisis. It's one of the pillars, in fact, but it's also part of Canada's value-based foreign policy, which outlines a strong commitment to the three following principles. Number one is promoting and protecting human rights. Number two is upholding respect for international law. And number three is the rules-based international order. So our efforts remain crucial, especially in the absence of credible, independent, and transparent accountability processes in Myanmar. So we need to intervene through these international courts, and no matter how long it takes, it's vital to do so. More than 3 years have already passed since the events of August 2017 in Rakhine. Through our engagement with the ICJ case, we're continuing to put pressure on Myanmar to meaningfully address the atrocities committed against the Rohingya. In the meantime, Myanmar must implement the provisional measures to prevent all acts of genocide as per the preliminary ruling issued by the ICJ in the Gambia versus Myanmar case last January 23rd, I think that was. Canada's focus on accountability is not just about seeking justice for survivors. It's also about seeking protection and rights for the Rohingya who remain in Myanmar, as well as those who have fled, and desire to return to their homes. So finally, I will conclude by adding that Canada is doing this because we feel that tackling impunity and ensuring justice in Myanmar are indivisible from the objective of long-lasting reconciliation and peace. There's no way around this. There has to be an accountability mechanism strong enough, or else not much will happen that will be durable. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I'm sure the platform will have questions for you, and we'll get back to you during the Q&A session. Let me now have the honor to invite Dr. Arsalan Suleiman to present his position on the ICJ and the justice issue. Arsalan, it's all yours.
Thank you, Professor Ahmed, and thank you to my fellow co-panelists, as well as the organizers for hosting this conference and this panel. I'll just briefly give a little bit of an overview on where we stand with the ICJ case, and also where the situation was in terms of justice mechanisms and accountability before the Gambia decided to file its case. I think as any observer of the situation of the Rohingya knows, the situation for justice and accountability was quite bleak up until the filing of the ICJ case. And the reason for that is that a number of the mechanisms that had been considered particularly the option of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, opportunities for bringing the case or bringing cases there were not, very clear. The path for that was not very clear because Myanmar is not a party to the Rome Statute, and the Security Council has not seemed very interested in referring the situation in Myanmar to the International Criminal Court. And much of the focus had been on seeking that type of access to a criminal tribunal like the ICC. Because, of course, justice within Myanmar is non-existent. There have been no prosecutions for the crimes committed during the clearance operations. The military controls its own access to justice for crimes committed by its own soldiers and members of the Tatmadaw. And they have essentially had impunity, absolute impunity for the crimes that they committed. And it was with this backdrop that the Gambia considered and decided ultimately to bring the case before the ICJ. And the reason why this is so important is that, number one, Myanmar has consented to the jurisdiction of the court as a party to the Genocide Convention. That statute provides that member states who are party to the convention and who have not issued a reservation to Article 9 of that treaty, they have consented to participate in or bring disputes related to the application, interpretation, or fulfillment of that convention to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And the Gambia, also being a party to that very same treaty, relied on that mechanism in order to bring Myanmar to court to answer for its lack of compliance with its obligations under the convention. And that's the second important part, which is that the convention sets forth obligations on the state parties to it in order for all state parties to the convention to not commit genocide, to take action to prevent genocide, and to punish genocide when it occurs. And it is those obligations that the Gambia is holding Myanmar to account for, given that it committed genocide against the Rohingya and it did not take action to prevent that genocide, and it in fact has not punished the perpetrators of that genocide. And so this mechanism, the mechanism under the Genocide Convention through the International Court of Justice, is important because it is seeking to hold the state of Myanmar accountable, the entire government of Myanmar accountable for those state crimes and for that failure of the state to abide by its obligations under the convention. And other mechanisms that are being pursued and that are potentially available, which include potentially the ICC, which is seeking to potentially base jurisdiction in certain prosecutions under the theory that certain crimes were completed on the territory of Bangladesh, having been initiated in the territory of Myanmar, but completed in the territory of Bangladesh. There may be jurisdiction for potential prosecutions based on that. And there's also a universal jurisdiction case that is being prosecuted in Argentina as well. And one thing to remember about those cases is that, particularly for the ICC, they ultimately need to have in custody the accused. Because it's a criminal court and criminal proceedings, there needs to be an individual who is being prosecuted, and that individual needs to be in the custody or jurisdiction of the court. And we certainly hope that that will be possible for the perpetrators of the crime of genocide against the Rohingya. But if those individuals don't leave Myanmar and Myanmar doesn't turn them over to the court, it may be difficult to envision them appearing before the court at this time. But of course, time changes things, and certain developments may occur. We've seen it in other cases, other examples, like in the situation of the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, where individuals who have fled justice and were seeking to avoid justice were ultimately captured and brought to justice, even though it may have been years later. So that hope certainly remains. But in the meantime, the Gambia is pursuing its case against Myanmar under the convention for Myanmar's failures to uphold the obligations under the convention. And And as Ambassador Prefontaine mentioned, well, I'll just back up a little bit. The Gambia filed its case in November of 2019, and this was on the heels of the second report filed by the UN fact-finding mission on Myanmar. The first report filed by that entity was in 2018, in which it set forth very clearly in a very detailed report all of the brutal crimes committed during the clearance operations. And it also established very clearly that according to the FFM's investigation, there were very clear indications that these crimes were committed with genocidal intent. And their report filed in 2019 further established that those indicators of genocidal intent and the risk that those Rohingya who remained in Myanmar would be or could be subjected to genocide was ever present, was still present. And so with that in mind, and with that background, the Gambia filed its application to the International Court of Justice in November of 2019. And as part of that application, it sought the court's immediate attention under a request for provisional measures, such that the court could issue provisional measures in order to protect the rights of the Rohingya during the pendency of the case, because the case may take a number of years. The court held hearings on that request for provisional measures in December of 2019. Myanmar did attend those hearings, did seek to present a defense against that request and the application, and Aung San Suu Kyi herself, the state counselor, was present there as Myanmar's agent in those proceedings. And the court on 23 January of this year, 2020, ruled in a unanimous 17-0 decision that provisional measures should be issued. And it set forth 4 provisional measures: 1, ordering Myanmar not to commit genocide and to ensure that its entities don't commit genocide. Also, to affirmatively take all actions it can to prevent genocide from occurring, which we can discuss should include a number of measures to reduce the risk factors for genocide that are currently present with regard to the Rohingya population still in the country. Also, they were ordered to preserve the evidence of the crimes of genocide, which is important because a number of areas where these crimes occurred have now been the subject of economic development and building of new facilities. And finally, they were ordered to report on the implementation of these measures periodically, first 4 months after the court's decision, then every 6 months. And Myanmar has in fact filed its reports on implementation. Though those reports are not public, they are filed with the court on a confidential basis, and the court has received those reports from Myanmar. As Ambassador Prefontaine has mentioned, Canada and the Netherlands have jointly indicated their intention to intervene in the case. And we do wait to see exactly on what basis they will seek to provide their views on the interpretation of the convention. But Gambia did welcome their intention to intervene and certainly looks forward to the continued support of Canada, the Netherlands, and other parties who are supporting this action. I'll stop there so that I don't take up too much time, and then we can get into further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Suleiman. I'm sure we'll come back to you in the Q&A. Let me now have the honor to invite Mr. Shahidul Haq. As I said, that he was very much involved in the whole process from the Bangladesh side, led the delegation actually during the December 2019 ICJ hearing. Mr. Haq, is all yours. The sound. No problem. I think there has been some technical we have to wait a minute or two.
Sorry,
Yeah,
there was
go ahead.
some hiccup, but
No problem.
I'm trying to fix it. Can you see my PowerPoint?
I think it's coming. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so let me go back. Sorry for this. We are having a very unstable uh, connections in this part of the town. Is it loud and clear now?
It's loud and clear.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Imtiaz, for including me in this distinguished panel. I think let me recognize the presence of High Commissioner, Excellency Benoit Prefontaine, who has been a big support from behind the scene for Bangladesh team in the Foreign Office to go both for the ICC and ICJ. And we do recognize that and their continuous support for the Rohingya cause. Now, on the issue of a title, I was thinking that should I put geopolitics of accountability and justice for Rohingya or pathways to accountability and justice for Rohingya? And I decided to go on the pathway because I thought let's explore rather than bring in a whole politics of accountability and justice, which possibly we'll have an opportunity to do at a later stage. Now, if you see the title, the picture in the title, these are actually a real picture of atrocities. So I wanted to bring the slide ahead of the presentations, and I'll try and focus on 4 areas. First, look at sort of a update status where Myanmar stand in terms of compliance with the ICJ or international norm, and then going to find the pathways, not only ICC, ICJ, and give a little bit of an insight into it, and in the process also looks at Bangladesh and expectations in terms of this is something rather very new. This is the third committee UNGA resolution just passed, and I would like to read because this also updates, and this is a resolution which is voted by 132 countries and co-sponsored by over 100 countries. So it is seems to be a near global opinion. It says that, quote, expressed grave concern at continuing reports of serious human rights violations and abuses by the military and the security forces, as well as violations of international humanitarian law in Myanmar against Rohingya and other minorities. So what it says that still Myanmar government is paying very little attention to whatever we are likely to discuss or come out of the international justice mechanism. Now, coming back, I thought I should also then see what the ASEAN countries are saying. This is the latest ASEAN Rakhine Crisis Report 2020, and interestingly, that if you read this, you will see that there's a huge similarity between the third committee report and resolution in this one. And I also want to read it because I think often we glance over it and we fail to understand what it says. Now, this is ASEAN report. 3 years since the Myanmar security forces unleashed a campaign of death and destruction against the Rohingya in northern Rakhine state, the situation remains grave. Despite significant international pressure and attention, Myanmar's authorities have done virtually nothing to end the discriminatory law, policies, and practice that has for decades been used to segregate and marginalize the community. Nor they have taken meaningful steps to ensure accountability for atrocities, refusing to cooperate with the international justice mechanism while promoting their own deeply flawed domestic investigation, unquote, page 48. So this is the status where we stand. So Myanmar is actually giving dam to everyone, including ASEAN. So that's where we are now under these circumstances. What that we do, we talk about sustainable resolution, peaceful resolution. There is international consensus that how it can be achieved by creating a conducive environment so that the Rohingyas can go back to their country. And there are 4 components, basically focusing on rights, genocide, root causes, and safety and security. And I think our Honorable Prime Minister has very clearly said that it's a political crisis and the solution has to be found in Myanmar. So any effort to find a solution somewhere else may not be as effective as one wish it to be. Now, there are 2 ways. I'll glance through quickly. There are 2 ways one can look at accountability and justice, or seek accountability and justice. One is the whole International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice, which our distinguished colleague Mr. Suleiman has raised, and also the High Commissioner. And then we have the independent investigation mechanism on Myanmar, which is basically to bypass the Security Council and create something in between for by the UNGA. And then you have responsibility to protect. There I would like to spend a little more time, because I think within the framework of responsibility to protect, we could establish a safe zone. The Foreign Secretary also alluded to us during his yesterday's opening remarks on the last page, where he said, let's get international civilian monitors or human rights monitors to come and look at the situation so that it gets over the years a little safer for Rohingyas to go back. And this is also our Honorable Prime Minister has floated as a proposal, 5-point proposal in 2017 UNGA, where actually she, among others, wanted to have a fact-finding mission, and that fact-finding mission is now the backbone of all the genocide process and ICC process, and then the whole safe zone idea, which still I think very relevant, and we should continue to talk about it in terms of seeking justice and return. So this is the ICC process. Now, just to give you an idea, both the ICC process and ICG process has happened in 2018. That's where things started moving, and that only happened, often we forget, when the Prime Minister decided that Bangladesh will take the whole issue to the UNGA in 2017. So these are subsequent steps taken by international community in close collaboration, and often because of Bangladesh's policy, especially in ICC. I remember ICC came with a request before they started the process, whether Bangladesh should be able to concur with the ICC that there is a jurisdiction and there is a case of atrocity crimes. And after a lot of discussions, and our distinguished Professor Imtiaz is privy to some of those from the civil society, because at the time we all were working together, and Mr. Imtiaz has been instrumental in creating an opinion outside the government about this. And also one has to remember and recognize that Bangladesh, despite its own genocide in 1971, has not actually walked through this path. So we do not have a history of seeking accountability and justice, even for ourselves, through these processes. So that's where a lot of confusion, a lot of dilemmas. But at the end, our Honorable Prime Minister very courageously decided, no, we will go and see where it stands. So I will go quickly, and if there are questions, I'll come back. So now, where the ICC process is, something also happened in between. That ICC, when decided that they will go to the investigation in 2018, they needed an agreement between government of Bangladesh and ICC so that they can come and they can pursue investigation independent of the government. Independent of the government. This is also something we have never done, because it had and still has a huge set of legal implications for us as well. But I'm very happy to say that the Prime Minister decided that we will allow this to go ahead, and there has been a series of investigation missions. In fact, sometimes they were even staying longer period here, so that only at a later stage we'll find out what they did and what they found out. So this is ICJ. I will not go because Mr. Suleiman is here, and I think he will be able to answer better than us. But I would also like to point out that when the hearing was done in December 2019, Professor Imtiaz is a member of the Bangladesh delegation, and some of us were present in that, and we had a very exciting time because we couldn't see our own genocide being tried, but at least we could see someone else who are our next door neighbor in terms of Rohingya I'm talking. So this is also I will skip. Now the court gave verdict, and it was very clear. In fact, the court did more than we expected. I think Professor Imtiaz will share our excitement on this regard, and that we thought there'll be a divided verdict, but there was a all consensus verdict, and also it recognized Myanmar as a vulnerable group which needs protection. This is the first time Rohingyas got a recognition from a global courts. That's very important. And I feel that despite this, Myanmar continue to deny their rights. So where are we actually? Is this a lawless post truth and post human rights world that we are stepping into? I thought that's not the case. But it looks like for Myanmar, that's what it is. And even when their ASEAN colleagues are saying that, look, you just cannot behave the way you behave, is giving jam to it. And I'll come back as to why I'm little more concerned than I should be at a later stage. So this is something very important. But in addition to these two processes, there are also UNGA process and Human Rights Council process. I think Human Rights Council process was extremely critical because it is the Human Rights Council will not only set up an office for special envoy on Myanmar, but also had the fact-finding mission. Brilliant report, in fact, when we were initially interacting with them, and Professor Imtiaz and others were meeting them, we were a little kind of concerned and skeptic that how this team will actually bring out the truth. And finally, when they did a wonderful job, and we know that whole ICJ and some part of our ICC process builds on that. So that is what it is. Now there are individual country sanctions. Canada, United States, Argentina, Maldives, British Embassy, and there is a bill currently in the Senate about 3 weeks back in U.S. Senate in terms of declaring this as a genocide. As you know, the United States did carry out a huge study, but they sort of fell short of calling it a genocide and called it ethnic cleansing. But now it has come back to the Senate, and we'll see how Senate looks at it. They're supposed to come out with a verdict within 3 months. Because of the transition, it might take a little longer. Now, how Bangladesh looks at it. Bangladesh continues to attach high importance. I think in 2018, once we decided that we'll move into that, there was no more looking back. And recent contribution financially and continue to provide informations, huge informations to the lawyers or legal team on the ICC and ICJ and ICC process. Talks about Bangladesh's continued commitment to this. Without Bangladesh's continuous commitment, it would not be possible to actually look at it, to continue to seek justice and accountability. This is the safe zone idea. I think, the safe zone idea is still very relevant, especially when you're talking about responsibility to protect framework. And this could eventually also come out of the international justice system. We'll see. We are pursuing. in various forum, and our honorable Prime Minister continue to suggest that this is possibly one of the best way to seek safety for Rohingyas in their own homeland. Now, what is Myanmar approach? I think we shouldn't close our justice persuasion process without looking at blame Bangladesh. Whatever is going, just blame Bangladesh. This year, UNGA, there was quite a bit of a show on behalf of Myanmar for the first time. And the statement that their Ten Shui made, their minister, union minister at the UNGA, was something really to see how a state continue to lie days after days, and even in the UNGA. So that's something also shows that what has happened. All of a sudden, Myanmar is taking an extremely aggressive diplomatic moves in the UNG and other places. We'll try and find that out. And then what is the end game that is talking about? Is there an end game for them, or is there some geopolitical game that they know and we don't know? So that's something also we have to think when you talk about justice and accountability. So this is the Human Rights Watch report, an open prison without end. So this is what inside Myanmar, and this is the people who are still displaced in the inside the country and in the camp. Now, this is something some of the academicians are talking about it. The whole set of compensation. Time has come when should you start doing and find out compensation. And there is a figure also going around. Although very rough, but there are studies done. So I thought I'll flag this with you as a part of accountability justice seeking process, that you seek compensation, financial compensation from Myanmar for the economic losses that incurred by the Rohingyas in some asset, income, and material losses, and then whole issue of torture, trauma, rape, and violence. So this is something also becoming stronger, and we should start talking about it. Now I've come to the last scale. What is the expectation of us? Our expectation is very simple. Let Myanmar comply with the ICJ verdict, number one. Number two, let's go for a conducive environment or a safe zone or together. And then the Security Council should at one stage deliver on the whole thing in real sense of it, not just wishy-nilly. And this is an important. Recently, we have been doing a kind of a desk study in terms of who does what business with the Myanmar government, and there's a surprising figure. And if you look at the trend, I mean, they have been receiving higher investment than Bangladesh, very close to Vietnam, and some of the countries. I think we shouldn't name and shame, but if they continue to do, and if you look at the Genocide Convention, isn't there some kind of a link that once a government is sort of identified with committing genocide, that government, in relation with that government, needs to be revisited? So that's one. And not only, it doesn't stop there. All kinds of countries are selling arms, ammunition, aircrafts, naval vessel, marine sort of platforms to the Myanmar government as late as last year. And I'm looking at the CIPRI report actually in front of me, and it's horrifying. So this is, at one stage, people are saying about accountability, justice. The international community is saying that there has been a genocide committed, and and some of the countries prominent in terms of human rights sort of flag holders continue to do a business and a booming business with the corrupt military and the government. So where is the justice and accountability? That's the reason I said it's more of a geopolitics of accountability to justice rather than seeking justice through ICC and ICJ. Now that is the reason I put the whole map on the right-hand side, which we designed as a fault line between the Japanese army trying to push through to Cox's Bazar and the British army opposing it, and that fault line, I think, it continues to remain in how to get access to warm water port, if not through Cox's Bazar, then Sitwe, for this time it is not British, but it's someone else. So that's something also we have to keep in mind when we think of justice and accountability, because at the end it is geopolitics. Thank you very much, and sorry for being taking a little more time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. We will straightly go to the platform and for Q&A. We still have more than 15 minutes. So the platform is open. I see. Let me see. Yeah, Dr. Mint, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, my good friend Saidul Haq and Aslan. I met you several times, and Your Excellency, the Canadian Ambassador. Secretary Saidul Haq has raised all the points that I wanted to give across during the course of these 2-day sessions. It's the applications of R2P, and he has specifically pinpointed the Kosovo example. Since Canada is a member of NATO and the UK is also a member of NATO, and in order to invoke R2P, you need to have approval from the Security Council. But if you see in the history, there are lots of intervention has undertaken without the approval of the Security Council. However, those interventions did meet the threshold of the, in order to make the intervention. And our case does qualify all kind of threshold for the intervention. And my question to all the Canadian envoy and the Foreign Secretary Saidul Haq, why there is a very low appetite for intervention in the international community for the Rohingya cause. Because Burmese government will not listen to any other than this kind of language, because diplomacy has been ongoing ever since the crisis has started. And this exodus is not the first one. It's been, I think, sixth over the last 40 years. So the attitudes of the Burmese government will not change. The political will of the government will not change. Aung San Suu Kyi herself, I was sitting next to Aung San Suu Kyi with my good friend Saidul Haq at the ICJ. She didn't even dare to look at us. Many diplomats have stressed the point that she herself described us as ethnic outsider. So I just want to pose the question to all of the panel, particularly the Canadian envoy and my good friend Saidul Haq, why there's a low appetite for the intervention in the international community, whereas that's not the case when it comes to the East Timor, which I raised yesterday, when it comes to Kosovo and even in Bosnia or Rwanda.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the panel who wants to speak? There are a couple of questions. Let me read out. One from Mr. Tekang. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it rightly. Tekang Wachu. And this is for Mr. Haq. Mr. Haq, in your views, what is the best and most rational decision which can be taken to secure and make sure that the Rohingyas are not exterminated by Myanmar? The second question is from Faziltunnesa Orin. And again, I think this is also directed to Mr. Haq. Recently, the two Australian lawyers acting on behalf of the Rohingya before the ICC have called the court to sit in Asia for the first time. So my question is to Mr. Haq. How do you like to explain this initiative's efficiency in terms of bringing justice to the Rohingyas? We also have a question from Leslie. Which states been still selling arms to Burma post 2018 slaughter? Have they all ceased supplying arms since ICC judgment? If done that, a signatory to support ICC, can they be penalized? I think she's talking about those who are supplying, those are still doing business with Myanmar, particularly selling arms. And we have one more from Mr. Tekan. What should OIC states do to lobby member states in NATO to seek a swift military intervention, and also getting an, I think from the UN Security Council, approval from the UN Security Council on Myanmar. These are the questions, the chat box. There is one more, I think, again to Mr. Hawk. What kind of diplomatic move do you expect from Bangladesh government to convince China, who is directly supporting Myanmar, and India, who is silent in the future? Anyone else wants to speak from the platform inside the box? No, I don't see. Let us start in the reverse order. Let Mr. Hawk go first, and we'll come with the High Commissioner at the end. Mr. Hawk, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. I'll try and be quick because I don't think we have much time. There's two questions. First, by Dr. Mint, a friend, and the last question, the second last question on the OIC lobbying for armed intervention. These two are the same. Yes, there's a possibility, but would that happen? I don't think so. When it will happen when the crisis gets exploded. When there is the UN. Would intervene, or NATO will intervene when there's a huge, big uproar. So that is the other possibilities to happen. At this stage, I do not foresee any possibilities of armed intervention by any side or create a safe zone. So that's the reason we have been floating the idea of safe zone through a non-armed intervention measure. So that's what it's certainly a good idea. It's a possible idea. It has happened in the past, but may not be reality right now. Will it ever be a reality? Who knows? Who knows if things go topsy-turvy? All will come running and saying that, come on, let's do something about it. So shall we wait till then? I don't know. That's something the Rohingya community has to need. But that's why I think Professor Imtiaz have raised a very valid question in the earlier sessions that, you have to have a political voice, united political voice to go around and say what has happened to you and what that you need to do. So if you're not able to do it, armed intervention is far cry. In terms of best and most rational way to save Rohingya, exactly that's what the Bangladesh is currently doing. Bangladesh is pursuing a multi-pronged policy. While we are talking bilaterally, so that nobody can say that we haven't exhausted our bilateral means, but at the same time, opened both the UN, non-UN, both accountable and non-accountable path to make sure that the Rohingyas are safe. And in the whole process, the government of Bangladesh is actually providing full protection to the Rohingyas right now. So that you have to recognize. And as I see my Prime Minister, I do not foresee any change in that. So I don't think their future at this stage is as dire as it used to be when they were there. So that's something we can look at. In terms of China and India, yes, Bangladesh has been in close consultation with the Chinese at the foreign minister level. There have been a tripartite meetings, 2 attempts, but I think all of us fail to understand that Myanmar authority comes for this kind of a negotiation with good intention. It is for them. It is a facade for them. It is a show. They are not coming actually to solve the problem because they want status quo. They want fait accompli. They think they have done a big thing after 1942, and it's a question to withstand. And at the end, everybody will forget these things, and these Rohingyas will not be able to go back to their homeland, and they will have all kinds of business on their land. So this is the scenario they are currently looking at, and the government of Bangladesh has also agreed to have a tripartite with India when India is joining the Security Council next month. So Bangladesh is open, as I know, to all kinds of consultation with anyone, as long as it involves Myanmar. So that's the one. On the whole issue of OIC, I think OIC has done for the first time, something in the area of accountability and justice. It has never done it, not even in the on the Palestinian issue. Possibly there were UN processes in the Palestinian issue, and that's why they didn't do it. But that has also happened in Dhaka in 2018 in May, where first resolution was adopted. I have the resolution, both the draft and the original one in front of me, where it says establishment of an OIC ad hoc ministerial committee on accountability for human rights violation against the Rohingya. So OIC has done something. They continue to pursue, but OIC is not a single sort of a united group. Within OIC, I'll not name, but some of you know, there are countries very close, seen as a leader of Muslim world, often are not keen to pursue the accountability justice path for the Rohingyas. And I'm talking about Asian Muslim countries. I'm not talking about the Middle Easterns. I think they are much more committed than some of us who are in our neighborhood. So that's I think with this I have answered all possible questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
There is
much.
one. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There is one question directed to Dr. Suleiman, and the question is, what is the nature of responsibility and liability of third-party countries who are financing, supplying, or supporting organizations, agencies in Myanmar who have a direct or indirect role in the continued persecution of the Rohingyas and deprived of the rights in the light of ICJ provisional verdict? Dr. Suleiman, please.
Thank you, Professor, and it was wonderful to hear from the former Foreign Secretary, who we remember quite fondly all of his assistance with the case while we were in The Hague. So thank you very much, sir. Certainly, if there are states who are also in violation of their obligations under the convention, then do similar action in the same way that Myanmar is currently facing action at the ICJ. But it would certainly depend on the particular activities and actions, and there would likely have to be some level of detail. For example, there's a question about states that are selling arms to the country and whether they could perhaps be implicated in some ways. I think for that, you might need to show, in order to show a violation of the Genocide Convention itself, you would probably need to show some connection between the arms sales and the use of those armaments in clearance operations, for example. And if you can show that connection, then you would likely have a stronger case. If you can't show that connection, then you would have a more difficult case, because certainly sovereign states are empowered, and it is their inherent right to provide for the self-defense. And as part of that right for self-defense, they are free to purchase and also produce their own arms. And so for that kind of linkage in terms of assistance from third states, you would need to have some very specific evidence or very specific indications that the assistance that was provided in furtherance of the genocidal acts, in furtherance of the clearance operations against the Rohingya. And so that would need to be very clear, I think, in order for a case to be brought. But aside from that, and I think His Excellency Mr. Shahid al-Haq mentioned this in his remarks as well, there are a number of processes and actions within certain governments that are being undertaken that are extremely important. And some of that includes sanctions policies, whether that's, a number of states, including the US and the UK and others, have sanctions that they have imposed against individuals based on their activities and actions, as well as conditioning of aid and assistance. I think Germany is a good example in which they have curtailed some of their assistance based on their concerns over the treatment of the Rohingya. And so as part of that, that is also a mechanism not only to directly address the situation and treatment of the Rohingya, but also to deal with potential assistance from third parties that may relate to that as well. If it's clear that a third party is assisting in these violations, then perhaps states that have these mechanisms for sanctions and other potential repercussions could use those means of leverage to address it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arsal. Well, we have a few more minutes. Dr. Bayer just informed that we can go 5 minutes more. Mr. Shahidul Haq, you want to respond?
So can I just respond to our distinguished colleague, Mr. Sulaiman? Thank you very much also your whole company for making things possible and your commitment. You know, in terms of arms sell, nowadays, even the small arms carries the number and they produce where it is produced. And some of the mines that were used in the bordering area between Bangladesh have clear marks and there are records. There are also UN report and there's also Human Rights Watch report. And I don't know whether you can see, this is a CIPRI 1990 to let's see, 1990 to 2019 arms sale report, and CIPRI report is available, and it literally tracks as to especially the big guns where it goes and where it's used. So it is possible, and I'm glad the colleague who has raised it. I think this is one area where even the UN might used to go. The other area is the whole issue of investment. Investment in the military establishment. The biggest company that's there in the Myanmar with whom everybody is doing business is basically a military-run company, like a Chinese model. And there is a wholesale report by the Human Rights Watch came out last month, detailing as to detailing in terms of where it is doing business and who is very, very critical. I think these are the things that should be also given to both ICC and ICJ. So that's something is a new area of research for our distinguished colleagues who are listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see. There are more questions coming, but we can't take all of them. We had a few more for the High Commissioner, particularly whether the questions, Your Excellency, is something like whether European Union and Commonwealth, whether they can start thinking about sanctions in the light that Myanmar is violating all the rules and regulations, even the provisional judgment. So whether European Union and Commonwealth can play a role in this. The floor is Your Excellency.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll begin by addressing NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was mentioned. NATO is kind of a mutual defense treaty. So if Myanmar were to attack one of the NATO countries, then the others could say, you must help us defend against Myanmar or invade Myanmar. That's very unlikely to happen. Commonwealth was also mentioned today, I think in the previous panel, as one organization which might be able to play a role. The Commonwealth of Nations in its current form has no military vocation. And I think the only tool they have would be to exclude a member, which is breaking international principles we all agree to abide by. And so Myanmar isn't a member. There's not much the Commonwealth could invoke to do other than these member countries deciding let's all organize a boycott or an embargo of some kind to apply pressure, sanctions against Myanmar. But I think that would be unprecedented when it's not a Commonwealth member country, as is the case for NATO. You mentioned the European Union, so we're not a member of the European Union, but certainly OIC, EU, Canada on its own, any country or group of countries could apply economic or various types of sanctions on Myanmar. It's already happening. But the key, the bottom line, I believe, is that that would be maybe not a military intervention or use of force. That would be a last recourse. And we're not there yet. There are still judicial mechanisms. And the diplomacy, it's slow, but there is some momentum. The kind of discussions that were happening at the UN are now happening in the OIC, are happening in various other capitals around the world. I can tell you that, when I'm telling you that the Rohingya crisis is a priority for the Canadian government, it doesn't just mean for me here in Bangladesh. All Canadian ambassadors around the world are raising with governments, what are you going to do? Can't we work together on this or on that? So there is still a lot to be done there. I understand that the Bangladesh government also becoming much more active in organizing groups and discussions everywhere around the world. And we certainly want to participate in that until we've exhausted these recourses. Going to use of force or responsibility to protect, these would require UN Security Council resolutions, and we're nowhere near that. One last point, perhaps, is, and I'd like to come back to, international coordination, solidarity with Bangladesh, with the Rohingya. There's still a lot to be done there. And I was trying to make the point in my presentation that if there was no ICC case, no ICJ case, it would be so much more difficult to keep this top of mind in many countries, to find the resources necessary for the Gambia to continue with its important case. Every little step requires mobilization, goodwill, and there's a lot of effort being made for that. If we do that well, a day may come where the UN Security Council will take decisive action, but we're not there yet, unfortunately. Over.
No, thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Benawat Prefonti. Thank you, Dr. Arsalan Suleiman. Thank you, Mr. Shahid Haq. I think I'm sure everyone will agree that we have learned a lot. This has been very policy-driven kind of a panel, which I think will definitely play a role in the future. It's not going to go away. And I'm sure we'll have other occasions to have the three speakers as things develop. As we know that things are developing, sometimes it develops very fast. There was one question, we just couldn't take it, but I just want to flag that whether there would be some changes with now that the Democrats will be back in the U.S. administration. Will that make a difference, given the fact that Joe Biden has been more proactive, talking about the rights of the Rohingyas? That we have to see. But I think I'm sure myself, I have benefited a lot from all the three speakers, and I'm sure others will agree with me on that. Thank you very much once again. We have the next panel. We have two more panels actually. We have one more panel that's more. It's a little bit different one. It's on more documentary and photo exhibition. But the final closing, the closing one session, we have our High Commissioner in UK, Her Excellency Saida Muna Tasneem will be there to speak at the closing session, and we definitely would want to know her position as well. She has been working on the Rohingya issue as well. So thank you again. Over to you, Dr. Bias.
Yes, thank you, Professor Imtiaz and all the panelists. It was really thought-provoking and an interesting panel discussion. So now I would like to move to the next panel. It's on Rohingya documentary and photo exhibition. And I mean, I think we can start in 7 minutes, but by this time, yes, we'll start in 7 minutes. You can take a break, a short break, go for tea or coffee, or yes, please be here at 2:45 p.m. GMT.
What happens to our team? Those who are virtually linked.
Sorry?
I like that. We need virtual tea now, no?
Yes,
I
I
said,
mean,
what happens to us? Those are virtually, because I've been seeing you all are going for lunch and then coffee break.
yes, I mean,
Just forgetting that most of the people are online and they
so
often.
that's a limitation of
No,
virtual.
technology has been built. I'm telling you, in the not this pandemic, but the next pandemic that will come, we will have virtual food. You know, crisscrossed across national boundaries. Don't worry.
Exactly. Thank you. It's
Thank you.
like
Yes, be here. We will start in 5 minutes and take a quick break. So I just want to check. Edward, are you here? Ed?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so
How are you doing?
yeah, everything is working perfectly. Mahmoud, do you want to check your audio and video? Is it working properly? You have to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mahmoud.
Then I'm on.
Okay.
Guys, just to confirm, I've got a link of the film, so I'll post that in the chat, and then I'll just suggest everyone, mute for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back.
It's better to, I mean, do you have that video file with you?
I'd rather not. I just don't want to play it through Zoom, and I don't want it to be recorded. So
No, we are not recording.
yeah.
Okay, you don't want it to be live streamed as well, seems like.
Yeah, just the quality is not good enough.
So what then we can do now, Mahmoud, I mean, in that case, do you want to start at the beginning?
That's up to you.
Ed, what I understand, if you don't want to, I mean, I thought you would share your screen and then share.
No, I said in the email that, I mean,
I get it. I mean, you are, this will be, yeah.
I think it would just be a sort of diminished experience. So,
do you want me to play it here, or you don't want?
No, look, I think I just wrote. I mean, I think I was quite clear that I'm kind of
no problem. I mean, in that case, what we can do, let's start with Mahmoud. He has a video file. Mahmoud, I can play your video.
Yeah, you can.
So what I will do, I will introduce you both. Okay. So, I mean, and then I play Mahmoud's video first. That's for 31 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I give you floor to Ed. Then you can give a short presentation.
Yeah.
And then share the link here with the
audience. That's a good, because also I suspect the delegates are owed a tea break. So let's try and stop sort of 20 minutes before the end, so that then those who want and show the film can watch the film.
Okay, yes. And then we take some questions from our audience.
Yeah.
So let's wait a few more minutes and then I will introduce you both. Okay. And Mahmoud, should I play your video from my screen or do you want to play it?
No, you do that.
Okay.
I'll be here as a listener. Should there be any question, then only I will come in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Do you know what, Baz? Baz? As long as it's not recording, let's play it. Let's share the screen. Are you there?
I saw somewhere it says that it's recording, but I'm sure they have an option where they can stop that.
Yeah, that's Baz. Can you?
He's not.
He's not.
He's not
You're
listening.
muted.
Sorry, we are not recording it.
Okay, in which case, let's. I'll share the screen and we'll watch it that way. Are you there?
Yes. Do you want to?
So if it's going to help, I'll share it by sharing the screen.
Yes, it's up to you. I mean, honestly, I have no problem.
Yeah.
I was thinking about your copyright issues or anything, whether you have it.
It's more the quality. I think the quality through Zoom is not great. But,
then do you want to go first, Ed or Mahmoud?
Oh, I have no problem. He can start first.
Okay, let's start with Mahmoud and then I come back to you, Ed. Okay, we will start in a minute.
I'm seeing that you have a good number of participants, 37.
Yeah.
It's being also recorded. I mean, sorry, it's being live streamed. So the entire session and all the talks would be available online.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we also have lots of people watch it later.
Okay, but usually, how do you know that how many people are watching straight away? Is it that number saying participants, right?
Yes, it's a total number of participants and
okay. It's such a strange thing to be doing this on air. I really find it strange.
yes, really, yeah, difficult for all of us, but
but we are used to
the
it.
pandemic. Otherwise, you remember what we did last year. Yeah, we all could be.
I hope in the coming years it will be better.
Okay, so I'm going to start the session now. Okay, so thank you everyone and welcome back to our session on Rohingya crisis, documentary, photo exhibition and arts. Today we have two distinguished speakers. First, I would like to introduce Mahmoud, who is a documentary photographer and works with development agencies on marginalized communities. His major work includes rural people in their surroundings, Bangladeshi women, children in difficult circumstances, trafficking of women and children, and communities on the fringes and indigenous people. Mahmoud uses his findings into visual advocacy, raising awareness through photo exhibitions and visual presentations in participatory discussions. He has been working on the Rohingya crisis since 2017 and has published 2 book albums on this Rohingya displacement issue. Our second contributor is Edward Lawrenson, who is an award-winning Scottish filmmaker and writer based in London. His films have played at a number of festivals, including Sundance, BFI London Film Festival, and in cinemas, including the Museum of the Moving Image in New York and London's ICA. He has also made radio documentaries for BBC Radio 4, and he has received a number of awards from Locarno Film Festival and in other renowned activities. He is also a senior lecturer in filmmaking at the Kingston School of Art at Kingston University, England. So to begin with, Mahmoud, he has produced, because he cannot be here in person, a short documentary that's for 30 minutes, and I'm going to play it here. And after that, Edward will present his work and share a link of his documentary, and then we will take some questions from the participants. Okay, so now let me try to share my screen. This is Mahmoud. This is Mahmoud. Can you see it?
I can see the screen, but I cannot hear anything yet.
Okay, let me turn on the audio. Okay, what about now? Photographer from
Yeah, it's working now.
This is Mahmoud. This is Mahmoud.
Now there is no voice. But come on, look. But I can't hear anything.
Maybe you can describe the photos, Mahmoud, as it goes by. You have to unmute. You are muted.
These things. Yeah. This is the beginning of 1997 September when people were coming. And then I moved into the camp. That's how it is. I think we are quite far. There are a number of photos that's already left the screen. I don't know how to solve that problem.
I mean, I'm playing the video as it is submitted by you.
Yes, yes. Now it's not moving anymore. Here I can only see that.
I just paused it because you guys are talking.
Okay.
I mean, this is for 30 minutes. I would request our participants just please watch it for half an hour. Then for any questions and queries, please, we can take.
As Professor said that I am describing that this is the beginning of the camp when there was hardly anything and people were coming in and stripping the forest. Yeah.
Okay, so please everyone mute yourself. Let me play the video first. Thank you. You can mute.
I have.
Let Mahmoud do the narrative.
Yes, I'm trying to do that. And this is how the saying this is how they're building the houses at the moment, stripping the forest and coming and making their little huts there. But if pictures should flow for me to be able to talk more, Bias, if you take few seconds for each, then I will
Uh,
start. I will continue
Mahmoud,
talking.
Mahmoud, I think it will take longer. I mean, your video is already 30 minutes.
Yes, yes, I understand that.
We don't
But
have any time to explain everything in between. I mean, let's play it first.
Bias is stopped. You don't stop it. Let it flow and
That
let
is me.
Mahmood from time to time speak. That's all.
uh,
Let me play it for half an hour, please, Mahmoud. You get my point. And then you take questions and explain it.
uh, I'm not understanding.
Okay,
All right,
I'm
all
playing
right.
it. Okay.
In 2017, I watched families arriving with sad, vacant eyes, dejected and lost, not knowing what the future would be. They stripped the green canopies of the Ukhia hills to make a shelter and to cook, flocked at the base of the mounds collecting fresh water, waiting in long lines to receive relief materials, pushing each other, angry at times. I have documented mothers with multiple children on the mud floor of her new home made of plastic and twigs. I felt the agony of Mia while he lay on the floor and the volunteer paramedic trying to clean his bullet wound. His mother, Nur Bahar, later described their misfortune. My husband was sowing seedling in the field when the military started firing. Mia and his older brother ran to check. Both the boys were shot, the older one killed. The villagers found my husband's dead body later. There wasn't time for a proper burial, and the whole village ran for shelter. Crossing the border wasn't easy, always fearing that the Mugs will find us. They walked for 5 days to reach Bangladesh border. Many families had similar stories to tell. By the end of a year, in their makeshift plastic shacks on the hills, one explained to me. Tears stopped rolling down our cheeks, repeating the same tale over and over again. Everybody asks the same question. This hardened our hearts. One has to worry about the living family members. I'm moving into the children's life. A rainbow visited one afternoon, but the children did not notice that. They were busy carrying water. Their mother was more worried about the late monsoon rain leaking through the weak roof. Now I'm talking about the people I met at that time. I did a homeless portrait session in a shack, and I returned after a year to give their photos to see their reaction. And there were children, some of the children had never had their pictures taken, ever, except for the government family portraits for census. So when I returned, the children, some of them told me that the schools teach us the same alphabet every day. I'm bored. Another one said, no shortage of food. One can walk to the medical centers for free with an ID. The rainy days are difficult though. Another one said that now we can look to get our daughters married before they get out of hand. Religious lesson is good enough for the girls, a father said. Early marriage remains very high among the Rohingya, so is dowry. Adolescent mothers and the babies have access to nutritious supplements through development agencies. I have informal discussions with the camp elders, the Maulavis, the Imams, through whom the religious sentiments are reflected, considering but spacing for a better future of the newborns. The answer remained the same. Allah is the provider. No shortage of brides in the camp, bragged one young man. Now, I met Nur Fatima. She has a new child, named her Nur Qaida. I asked her why there is a non-stop fire in the closed room. The cord dries up fast, lessens the pain. She's expected to be in that position for 7 days. Then Khatija's child is 1 day old and no name is given yet. She's married when 16 and not long ago. Orphan sisters, Zannat and Mozina, lost their mother 3 years ago in the camp. Father was hacked to death by the mock military 16 days before the Qurbani Eid, the girl told me. I walked into a madrasa and Kulsum and her cousin learned the holy book there next to the quarters. It is run by the Saudi donors, the Maulavi said. Coming out of home will soon be gone as they will menstruate. and ready to be married off. This is about the early marriage scenarios. This is what I saw between 2017 September for the next 1 year when I completed my exhibition with ActionAid Bangladesh. I took the exhibition to several places to raise awareness. It was in Bangkok, in Bangladesh, few places. And I had opportunity to take it to Indonesia. And I traveled to Jakarta 2018. And I thought to look into their lives. So I traveled to Makassar and met people who tried to escape to Australia through the Atlantic and failed. They had refugee status and living in a life in transit. Some started a family with the Indonesian brides. Most hoped that they would someday travel to America when time comes. And even though they are stranded, they are considered refugee there. But in the camps in Bangladesh, they are stranded with no identity. During the launching of my first exhibition in Cox's Bazar, Dola, a performance artist, she volunteered to show a mother's pain, how she lost a child when she was running away from the Myanmar army. And after that, I returned to the camp 2019 with ACF, an agency working for women and children, building infrastructure and providing sanitation for more than a decade. One of, as ACF told me, there is pressure from the community. People feel that NGOs are giving all the aid to the Rohingyas and not to the host communities. So we had to address it and started the similar program they were running in the camps. And now I'm telling some of the stories in the host communities, how they are addressed. I met Senwara, who bought a pair of geese from the money she earned through Cash for Work program. She's happy. And I met crab trader Rashid Mia. His son works with him. Rashid told me that this is Anjuman Para, through which thousands of Rohingyas walked through the paddy fields in 2017, destroying everything. But now it's good that they are thinking about us. I did not have to borrow money on interest. So that helps. Then I met Alema, who has a paralyzed husband. He is Soyod Alam, who is paralyzed for 3 years. But his life wasn't like that, the wife said. He was the one who would work in the fishery project looking after a family of 9 members, never sitting idle. The help of 25,000 taka from Mukti is used for his treatment and buying these goats. One has given birth to 3 babies. Our elder son, 2 sons support us when they can. This is in Ukhia. Then I met the mother and son in the same village. They were abandoned by the husband, and the mother said that he left us when the boy was in my womb. He married somewhere else and sired another 3 children, never returned to see us. I've invested most of the earned money from fixing roads in my vegetable patch. Some people even call me a vegetable farmer. The Rohingyas come to buy turmeric leaves they use in the making of a curry. 3 leaves bring 10 taka. That's good money. Then I met Akide in a community nutrition center. She works with 3 other workers, but this is in Teknaf, not in Ukhia. That's another area through which the Rohingyas entered Bangladesh. As Aki said, we had some Rohingya beneficiaries also in the Rohingya town. Last month, they had to leave for the allotted camps as the government said that they cannot live here. We are expecting today 29 children and we'll distribute food supplements and regular checkups for mothers and the children. There came Tom driver Farooq and his wife Rukia, bringing their child to monitor the progress of Ruhan's health. They say, this is our 3rd visit. The arm measurement is increasing slowly. We did not know about the Pushtikhana, as they say, nutrition center. One lady from Shed, an NGO, visited our home recently and that helped. Ruhan was agitated all the time and would not eat properly. and kept us awake all night. He now sleeps, and we do too. This is about Shobita. She called her goat Haluni, and her son named another goat at Sakib after the most popular cricketer of Bangladesh. Then I asked her, is there a fox around to kill the cattle? Oh, never seen one. So many families are settled in this former forest. This area was cleared during the grandparents' home. This is important. I feel that people are always blaming the Rohingyas for cutting the forests and all these things. But cutting the forest in this area has been happening for a very long time. Of course, when the Rohingyas came, it sped up. That is deteriorating, but the damage was being done for a long time. Then I met Reboti. Her husband died, a rickshaw puller, 5 years ago. From the money she received from the Cash for Work program, she invested in pigeons and goat, but she said that it needs constant guarding. And especially at night, the thieves from the Rohingya camps try to break in. I sleep with a machete in the cattle shed. If there is a noise in the tin fence, I clutch my weapon. So here, the fear of the newcomers is very high among the host communities. I have a feeling that will take a long time. Now I'm entering into the camp through ACF, and I'll be talking about their healthcare, nutrition, and other things. I met Dalia. She's a health educator working with a pregnant and lactating mother. So I thought I will ask her about the situation here. I asked her whether did you work in any awareness session like this while you were in Rakhine? She said yes. Once in a month, UN women would come and give us red tablets. I understood that that's iron tablets, possibly with contraception pills, but they never gave food. We talked about birth spacing in an uncertain future. She said the husband's, one mother said the husband's hukumat is an order, is the last word. They're against birth spacing. And my question is now, you are in another country, you have no identity, living at the mercy. Should you not be careful? Husband said, why worry? A child brings a new food card from the foreign NGOs. So that's a new reality here. And I thought I would go around Ukhia and Cox's Bazar and see the hazard land, erosion, climate change and everything. And I put some shots in here. It is the same landing station through which the Rohingyas came. But for the local population, that difficulty remains the same. They had to cross the river, go through different terrain to reach their home. And in one morning, I was working in the registered camp where I saw a group of people carrying a dead body. And I followed them to the graveyard on the top of the housing. And they say that it is important to be a clan. The whole camp is divided into clan. You are part of a group. If you have none, who is going to bury you? So that's in a place where there is non-existent identity, but people cling to their keen ones. I think that could be the strength of survival. I met Fatima. She was home visiting, but again, she was unhappy with the men in the camp. The Huzurs want to keep their job and talk in favor of the men to have children without breaks. They've created hell in this earth, thinking that foreign help will never stop. They will have to answer to Allah, neglecting their wives and children. Mothers listen, but there is not much protest. The health worker told me that things are changing, but very slow. The mindset of the mothers and the men hopefully will be changed. Then I was with SCF and they show the mothers how to look after their babies with toys, with sound. And here Fahim is 10 months old and he's being massaged. Massaging the limb makes the child relax, and bonding grows between the child. Gas comes up the tummy and the child's appetite grows. And the mothers are asked to repeat the steps by the trainer. And the mother later told me that I came to the same place with my firstborn and now the second child. The center has been there for the children's nutrition and healthcare. My oldest child is 7 years old. When we perform a stimulation session like this, the child is happier, they giggles. And then I walk to two other children who are being attended, Khurshida and Sanjida. So they're not the children, they're the adolescent mothers. They come with their 5 and 4 years old children, Jasmine and Nilanjana. So here they're taught how to use homemade toys, like filling a plastic bottle with soil, making a boat, a flower, a soft ball from old clothing. The idea is to say that this is safe and you can make it at home. And the mothers enjoy it because they can come out of their tiny home and be with the children. A mother was looking after her child, and Ziaul is her youngest, 3 years old. She told her story. I entered Bangladesh with my family from Nafura. Too many children to look after, and Zia was neglected. I would bring him here to the Shujikhana, as they call we call these nutrition centers, and he survived. So there are happy mothers when they come to different development agencies looking after children, education and that. But I did not cover education much. It's mostly about health and sanitation. There I come to another session of the elder children. They call it therapeutic play session at the Kutupalong camp. That is the first camp. The children say that we are born here. Whenever we want to have fun, we just come here, we play. This is our playground and there is food. But these children were in school near the camps. Today is an art competition for grade 2 classes. And this is between a number of schools. And this is a hand washing day. It's celebrated here. This is not only drawing, as the NGO worker told me. The children will be asked questions regarding cleanliness. One has to demonstrate the skills of hand washing, how many seconds between each hand, number of times. And the Dhaka Hassani Mission children, they're from an NGO, who came with the traditional Myanmar's dresses. They wanted to stand out, and I thought they looked beautiful. But that the longing to go back still there, but they're stranded. And then I went to a hand washing session in the camp where the volunteers go to a community and ask them to perform. But at the best thing is for the children, they get very happy when after the session they get a Lifebuoy soap. I've been told that without that, even the mothers are reluctant to come and join in workshop and a session. I'm talking about the income generation activities inside the camp, like I showed you before in the host community. Here, I met the barber in Hakimpara, Nur Hasim, who learned it in Myanmar, but never had the money. He worked for 72 days and earned money. And he bought a chair, a mirror, decoration, everything. And he said that, I charge 30 taka for a haircut. Men comes for shaving their beard and armpits. And I think I've taken some loan which should be soon be paid off. I met a lady next to the place and she said that her husband is brain out. I understood that she has mental disorder. He comes and goes, wishes for days. We have a child, and he was here 2 weeks earlier, demanded money. Where can I get extra money? So
This is Toslima's story. Toslima learned how to make a fishnet grandfather. Now I make it here. It's a life savior. And people come to the house and ask about it and I sell it, and I'm doing a new life. Then I met the singers in a tea stall. They sing and talk about in a melancholy voice, about the sadness, the atrocities they faced in Myanmar. And then they pick up an issue, a health issue, hygiene issue, and sanitation issue, and sing about it. And men listen, children listen. And I ask them, why men? Don't you do it for women? He said, no. Women will do women's session. This is for men. Women are not allowed to come here. So that segregation remains very strong. Biogas. As in the beginning of the show, you've seen that the children's life was mostly about collecting water or fetching firewood from the forest. That's why the green canopy was gone. But the NGOs had tried biogas from human excreta. That is gone. Now there is enough gas cylinders supplied. So people can go back with their cylinders every end of the month and get a new one. So that helps to decrease the deforestation, but the damage is already done, I guess. When I walk into the camp and wander around, I feel it's a disjointed city of its own. It seems that everything is there and nothing is there. It's look like a mega slum. And there is sadness, there is happiness, there is struggle. The Megapeng in Kutukalun changed the economic scenario in Ukia, affecting the refugee and the host community. The early morning market by the roadside in Kutukalun is the largest and the busiest in this region, buzzing with wholesalers from the host community, and it's mostly men. The emerging market in now called Rohingya Bazaar, it was called Moinargona before. Now there are marketplaces called Madhuchara or Mochara. So anywhere the Rohingyas are more active, people usually refer to it as the Rohingya Bazaar. And I remember at Pan Bazaar, there was no gold shop, probably maybe one. Now there are almost a dozen gold shops. So there is money rolling everywhere. And I understood that there are a very good number of men from the registered camps. They traveled to Myanmar through the sea, and they send money. Now, I'll be talking about a new finding. I'm calling it The Lost at Sea. It's a series I wish to continue to show the mental suffering of the wives or the mothers that their husband or the sons left for a new future to Malaysia through the boat people and never returned. And I spent few days and in registered camp 2, and I found almost a dozen of cases. And these are the few. Here, the first time at Senowara, her husband left 6 years ago. People were always going somewhere in the winter season through the fishing boat. I tried to stop him because I was pregnant at the time, but he did not listen. Why you are so mad about going? He said that when I was young, my relatives used to look down on me because we are poor. He said that I would go to Malaysia and be rich and show them off. I said, you may die. He said, no, it doesn't matter. Even if I die, I will die in Malaysia, not here. So that urge to prove himself and not to stuck in a hole, I think that made people desperate. And he also told his wife that, wait for me 5 years. If I don't come back, marry again. 5 years gone. She hasn't taken a husband yet. Then I met Toyoba. Her son left with the same group, but never returned. Toyoba works in a restaurant as a dishwasher. Then I met Kobir Ahmed and Khurshida. Their son Siddiqur left to be in Malaysia. The couple had 11 children. As they explained the situation, our son came to Bangladesh to visit the aunt. The police came during the regular checkups on the Rohingya youths. That was in Myanmar. But they didn't see him and erased his name. So he was not even listed there. But Siddiq did not tell a word that he was going to Malaysia. He talked to a dalal and left. And they said that, dalal always said that, oh, give us some lump sum money. When the boy reaches, we'll ask for that. But who knows? He could be lost. Nobody knows where he is. Then I met Rashida. She was sitting by the wall graffiti. It was done by the children, school children, drawing on the wall. She said that 6 years my son left. He was only 17 years. He was afraid that he would be taken by the Bog military in Myanmar, so he ran away. But he did not call me when he was on the boat. But others men did call them. So people tell me that my son was sold as a slave. And it's hard for a mother that she still hopes that the son will be back someday. And Rashida has another 2 sons in Malaysia who were successful landing there. And she tells me at the end that you told me that you have friends in Malaysia. Please send his name. And if you hear from him, let me know. So I did this to an organization, all these names to a organization in Malaysia, but none of them were identified. I'm talking about Samsun Nahar. He's Samsun Nahar's husband, Fazlu. He boarded a boat with sister-in-law. The sister and husband is already there and a 1-year child, but he never heard from them again. They just left. Maybe the boat capsized. Nobody knows. Then I met Sanjida. Again, her son is lost 6 years. He called me from Akiab in Myanmar for the last time. People say that he is arrested by the Malaysian police and is in jail. His last sentence was, Ma, pray that I can reach the shores of Malaysia. So Sanjida is holding a Jack photo, meaning the census photo, when the son was 10 years old. The only memory I have of my son. She gave birth to 13 children and 7 of them died before they reached the age of 5. My son was mad for cooked rice, happy when his tummy was full. I got him married and his wife found another man after a year of his disappearance. Sadness of a mother. Then I met a man who was there, but he was arrested and they sent him back. But how did you go? I asked him, no, I made a Bangladeshi passport and went. But people did that in the past. Ali Asghar, he's 25, was in Malaysia. He was among 6 men who was caught there by the police. The others came out paying money, but his brother was also apprehended, but they could not pay, so there is no news. So I said, how did you go? He said, no, we made Bangladesh passport and went, and many people went like that. And but things are not like that anymore. You cannot go. The last of this series is of a mother that she said that son was in prison, but that's it. There is no news of it. So story continues. So I think there's not much to talk about it. But I thought that I would visit the place where all the men mostly go. They talk about Shamlapur fish landing. They say that boat leave from here in secret. And Shamlapur is a ship landing station with trawlers. That's where people find a middleman and try to go. But it's a long journey and it's not always a successful journey. And there are never-ending stories. And they always say that, oh, pay us. You don't have to pay anything. Once you go there, your family will pay it, and we are fine with that. But the demand increases. Men get lost. Children got lost. Women got lost. So that goes on and on. And I understood that there are many more stories in the camp of wives who are longing from the husband, mother waiting for their son to come back. I think it's sad, and I see their eyes are full of tears when they talk about it. So this is more or less the story that I thought I will compile for this online exhibition. And most of the images are between 2018 and 2019. As I mentioned that I worked with an agency who are mostly working with the mother and the children. And the book is published through SEF, but on the top of that, my first book is more of the testimonies of the future, probably, that I should show you. Thank you very much. And I will take questions, I suppose, for the next 20 minutes or half an hour. And I try to explain more if you have any queries.
Yes, thank you, Mahmoud. It was a great documentary and it was really touching. And thank you for bringing real world stories from the camps and also from the host communities. So yes, now I would like to invite Edward to, yes, feel free to share your screen.
Yeah, I mean, Baez, I was just thinking, is there time to show the film because it's 18 minutes long, and I know that.
Yes, I mean, we have 35 minutes, but it's up to you. But we will take, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes at the end.
Okay, okay. Well, I have a short. First of all, just see screen and okay. I have a. First of all, I have a short presentation, and Mahmoud, those were amazing photographs. It's kind of a real honor to show work alongside images so strong. So really impressed, and yeah, well done. I mean, a remarkable series of images. I hope to show a film I made earlier this year called A Safer Place. It's actually the first screening of the film in a public setting, and I can't really think of a better place to kind of show it. I've found the array of kind of expert views and the diverse kind of issues affecting the Rohingya crisis that have been explored over the past 2 days kind of fascinating, and it's a privilege to listen to them and to participate. So I'm just going to quickly introduce the film by sketching in some backgrounds. My work as a filmmaker, I tend to work with specialists from other disciplines. So my last 2 films were collaborations, one with a consultant psychiatrist, the other one was an architect. And I guess it was with this in mind that I approached the IRDR, the Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction, because I was kind of interested in the work that they were doing, and I became particularly curious about the work that Dr. Baez was doing, the work that he and his colleagues were doing to introduce an early warning system for rainfall-triggered landslides in the camps. And with this in mind, I accompanied Dr. Baez this February, really to sort of chronicle and to commit to the screen and to find a way of filming the work that he was doing, the aims and the scope of the project. And therefore, in the film, forming, I guess, the spine of the film is an interview with Dr. Baez talking about the work. But another thing that really impressed me about this project was the space that it gave to the lived experience of the Rohingya in the camps. And that was important for me to give a space to these voices in the film as well. And so, you know, when I show the film, you'll see that a good part of it comprises the voices of a group of women who are talking about their attitude towards disaster preparedness, particularly around their attitude towards extreme weather events. Now, you don't see their faces in the film. Quite early on, I made a decision to anonymize them. And another reason for this was that it meant that I could use the camera to explore the shelter in which this interview took place, particularly the sort of interior architecture. One of the themes, I think, of conferences, and it came out especially in the panel discussion on natural hazards in the camp, is the structural fragility, I guess, the structural vulnerability of a lot of the built structures in the camp. And so in this way, by exploring the kind of domestic architecture of the space in which one of the interviews took place, I hope that the film could kind of foreground this issue. And as well as filming in the camp, I became increasingly curious about the life in the immediate surroundings of the camp, particularly the beach resort at Cox's Bazar. And I suspect to an international audience, and ultimately I think this is to whom the film is pitched, an international audience would probably find the proximity of this beach resort and the camp quite surprising. And I thought that there was an obvious contrast and therefore a kind of poignancy between the carefree kind of joy and pleasure taken on the beach and the stories of distress and trauma that were shared with us in the camp only a few miles away. And there's another aspect as well, which is I think the scenes of ordinary Bangladeshis sort of having a day trip, a day out at the beach. I think it says something about the advantages of freedom of movement that we take for granted and is obviously denied the Rohingyas. Finally, it's an aspiration for me to kind of share the film as widely as possible, and particularly appeal to, I guess, a non-specialist audience. And with this in mind, just today, the film is being hosted by an advocacy organization for refugees and displaced people called Refugee Tales. And they're showing it for free for the next 2 weeks. And it's actually, rather than risk sharing the screen, I'd like to share the link to the film on their website. So if you just bear with me, I shall hopefully now in the chat, I've just shared a link to that. So can everyone see that?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. So I suggest you just click through there and watch the film. The film is about 17 to 18 minutes long. And then, Bias, should we sort of return at that point?
Yes, just a moment. I'm sharing it again with everyone. Okay. Also, so yes, let's spend. How long is that?
It's 18 minutes. The film. 1/8.
Yes, I mean we can go to the link and watch it, or I can do the same what I did for Mahmoud. What do you prefer?
Well, the reception wasn't so bad, so why don't you share a screen? But I think if there are problems with volume, I just think.
I think let me try to share my screen and see how it goes. Is it all right to you?
Yeah, okay, give it a try. Yeah.
Okay.
Guys, can you make it full screen, please? Yeah.
Just, is everything all right? Ed? I just paused it just to make sure. Okay, I'm playing it again. I'm here to work on the Rohingya crisis in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. As you know, like 1 million Rohingya refugees fled from Rakhine state to avoid persecution and violence. Suddenly, the 1 million people entered into an already overpopulated and environmentally degraded area. We had to accommodate them, suddenly 1 million people. Where we are sitting in front of a beautiful sea beach in Cox's Bazar, and you can go for surfing, swimming, and yes, you can ride the horses. The Rohingya camp is just 10 kilometers walk from here.
Ara bodda gorata to no yi shulo gorata to no yi zanbaza jashi zanbazan foros taram kada ka sani ba idi Allah ko chuguriya Allah hata ada gurin bari ara boro boro farat gotwa to ono dahan no yi shoba yon mara ara yon guri o manu borma ma de ara jaga Allah hora sambhavana nai Wara Burma de imbulo ko patai jara abata na nalle hotto na ara onara fada ditto no gali ara mara dikone ara kilokor kula gali no de aya hotto saidde onara to kuno ya hatu kuno সারা জীবন হড়ে তাইতে সোনা আনারা ইল্লা বা সমানতাই বল নাকি কেন তো আমারে পয়েন্টের ভবিষ্যৎ নাই ইয়া নাই এখন बोलो करे एड़ा यहाँ करा بكون كفاتي اكشات بكون لي لا رات كده صراحة كده أخرى guri mare mare veler turun gore bermati gore oma arah tu macam kata mana masih lagi sempat kita nyerot beda bisa mau dia beda bisa kurang dia bisa asal jangan pura-pura maaf pacar marah kecil malam-malam dia malam-malam dia melek tiri pura-pura mandra hari bela ye marah hari bela ye kotiya hari bela ye bidi hari bela ye buku tiri oh mare oh malde are kata ngeliat kata mana korban dia are arah tu mana itu nama dia dah bela Allah tu masalah musibah tatap
আর কক্সবাজার এটা মানে এটা এরর পদ্ধতি কোন ধরনের এই পানি উডন তুয়নন এই কি অনেক কিছু করতে রইলে ওরা এনে মনে করেন বাড়ি থেকে লেগন আর যদি বেশি বেশি জ্বর করে পানি করে দুধ তো পানি করলে কত এখানে বাকি থেকে গেছে
If you come here in June and July, you will see very few people because that time, anytime there can be cyclone warning, the waves, high tides. I mean, near about 4,000 millimeter rainfall you can expect. This area was already vulnerable to landslides, and now because of the Rohingya influx, I mean, the landslide vulnerability has increased. So it's a soft soil and porous, combining the soil type geology and the hill cutting and deforestation, and so many people living in a tiny place. So that's the ideal situation for landslides. Now, let's start from the camp. What can we do? I mean, if it was someone else, like we could say, okay, for 2 months, we can relocate you somewhere else in a safer place. And then after you come back. But this is a refugee context. Early warning system won't work. Early warning systems means like, okay, 3 days beforehand, you get an alert. What you do, you just leave that place. But here, you cannot even relocate some refugees from one camp to the other.
আর কি কি ওনারা এটা তো আসন মনে করেন আপাতত না অস্থায়ী ভাবে আসন কিছু হয় দিনলাই বিপদ হইয়ে বাংলাদেশের দেশন এখন যদি মায়ানমার যদি ওনারা যদি হয় যে যদি ওনারা নাগরিকত্ব দিকে ভোট দিতে পারিবেন সরকারের নাম মারিক নারী ওনারা নিজেরা জায়গা নিজেরা পাইবেন এলো তো মায়ানমার যে লাগবে না
মায়ানমারের সরকার যদি হয় তোরা বেশি সুযোগ সুবিধা দিও তোরা বুট দিতে দিও তোরা শান্তিতে রাখম বেগি রাখম ওনারা কি মায়ানমারে দেবাং কোনে শান্তি ভাবে জায়গা তারে দিলে রোহিঙ্গা মানি লইলে রোহিঙ্গা মানা করিব জায়গা মানি লইলে হ্যাঁ 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 দিলে যাইবে এটা যদি আরে কোন দরা করি আরে বোম মারে দিলে আরা মরে যাবে গো আরা তো ভালো আরা দৌড় দৌড়
So now you can see it's a beautiful sea beach, and I think at least few thousand people are here. That's beautiful. If you feel and you have some savings, we can go to anywhere, Australia, the US, nice places like Venice, all over the world, isn't it? Being a disaster specialist, yes, nothing can, like, whatever technology you bring, if you force them to live on those risky slopes, I mean, that's dangerous. So that I want to tell you. I mean, but we have nothing to do. What we will do? I mean, even the parents cannot save the children in that situation. What do you do? Because you need to live, you need to survive, you need to continue. Yes, I mean, they come to us for help, and they say, can you relocate me to a safer place? And we all, including UN and Bangladeshis, we say, no, we cannot. But you can see rain is falling, mud flow is there, everything. I have some photographs later, I'll show you. So they say yes, and they start praying.
Baz, you can just stop there.
Yes. Thank you, Ed.
Okay, obviously the sound wasn't the best quality because it was being fed through sort of share screen. So I just sort of point that out.
It was, I think it was perfect, frankly speaking, and yeah, it made me really emotional. Both documentaries from Mahmoud and Edward. I lost my words, but yes, now the floor is open. We're expecting our the High Commissioner of Bangladesh in the UK. She will join us within the next 10 to 15 minutes. So when she will join us here, we can move to our closing session. But by this time, probably we have 10 to 15 minutes. Now, I really want to take some questions, but I want to thank both Mahmoud and Edward. It was really compelling, heart-rendering, and emotional videos, bringing case studies and stories from the Rohingyas. Thank you so much. So yes, anyone wants to jump in or any question, please, you can write in the Q&A. So I would, in that case, I mean, I would like to go throw some questions to first to Mahmoud. I mean, do you want to share some more experience from your field work in the camps since 2018, or do you want to add something else from your viewpoint on the crisis? I mean, where it is going? Is there any end of this kind of crisis? And that's not only Rohingyas in Bangladesh. We have 1 million refugees, but there are 25 million other refugees worldwide. So it's a global problem we are facing. Probably we will find similar stories, more or less, in any context. So yes, Mahmoud, do you want to share something with our audience? Let me unmute you. You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mahmoud, we can hear you.
Okay. I am good when a question is asked. If not, I see a question here. Somebody is trying to asking me about the trend of the Rohingya refugee to migrate to Malaysia through the dangerous and risky water. I think I would like to answer that. It's
Yes.
someone, Afzalur Rahman. All I understood is that Rohingyas did come here before, but not in big numbers. But then, how would you like to be in a hole for years after years? Everybody wants an opportunity to be out. I think for young people to go away and start a fresh life, that drives people to desperation. That's what people told me. But the moment I went to the fish landing stations where boat takes them, the boat people, the fishermen, they say, no, we don't do that. But then if you ask in depth, and then you slowly find out. And I met refugees in Malaysia, Rohingya people in Malaysia. I've seen them begging in the Muslim quarters in Bangkok. I've seen them in outside Jakarta, in Makassar, just on by the strait. There are a few hundred, and I made friends with them, and I smuggled myself as a Rohingya, entered into their quarter and photographed them. I went there as wedding session. All people say that if you're out of the camp, you have a future. in the camp, you have no future. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mahmoud. I can see another question. I would request Edward to answer the second question. Do you want me to read out, or?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Saying, it's from Tekang, saying, my question is, what is the future of the Rohingyas in the camps, and what challenges do you face in making the videos in the camp? What frequent questions did the kids ask?
Okay. Well, there's obviously the big question is about what's the future of the Rohingyas, and I'm not qualified to answer that, but I can certainly address the filming of the children. I mean, that was a very important part of my experience in the camp. I mean, it was just, I think one is just overwhelmed by the energy of the sort of exuberance of the kids, which is not to discount the very real sort of issues and problems and distress that's and trauma that's lived there. And hopefully the film gives space to that from the testimony of the women. But I also wanted to just, the film, even in 18 minutes, just to sort of acknowledge and chronicle the kind of energy of the kids and the exuberance of the kids there. And it was really just a joy to sort of be around them.
Okay, thank you. And Mahmoud, do you want to address this question? In your opinion, based on your experience, what's the future of the Rohingyas in the camps? And what challenges do you face in making the videos?
There are two things. At the beginning, the crying that stopped, and slowly the children adapt to a situation. They think this is life now, because they are not seeing anything better. So you can ask questions and they will always say that, oh, I'm fine with the children. But adults say that this is not life. But then again, people say that there is no shortage of food and no everything, but this is not life also.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go to the registered camp, the people who came one generation ago, they have a better life, or they have some connection. The families has gone to Malaysia, they send money, or some of them married into the society. So this is a mix, a very difficult question to ask. And I don't want to raise any stupid political, social issue that will put them into trouble. Thank you.
So I want to close this session here because our High Commissioner is waiting. She will give her closing remarks at 4. Yes, Mahmoud, you want to say something?
To let you know that when I took the exhibition to Bangkok, the High Commissioner did open that show, just to tell you.
Okay, so she'll be here today, so you can say
it's the
hi.
same person, yeah.
So any last few words from Ed and Mahmoud, then I close.
Just to thank you guys for the conference and for the opportunity to screen the film. Yeah, and if anyone wants to get in touch with me about it, my email is on my website, which I'll share in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Ed, and thank you, Mahmoud. Now I would like to request Professor Imtiaz Ahmed to moderate our last session. That's the closing remarks, and he would be joined by High Commissioner of Bangladesh in London and her team. I can see Mr. Shadipto Alam. You can just say hi and turn your video on. And also, I would request Professor Peter Sammons to be the co-moderator and with Professor Imtiaz and close our conference today. So, Professor Imtiaz, so what do you have?
Thank you very much, Dr. Bias. I'm just, I can't see the High Commissioner. Is she there? Sudipto, I can see your, Sudipto, is the High Commissioner in or?
The High Commissioner will join in a minute.
Okay, thank you, Sudipto. Thank you. So we wait for a minute. In the meantime, Peter, please go ahead. Your last thoughts.
I mean, I think it's been a really fascinating conference, and I must congratulate Fayez Ahmed for the work he's done in organising this. I mean, it's been a lot of work, but I mean, the range of opinions, the diversity of input, the case studies from many countries, the involvement of leading people from Canada, Bangladesh, of course. We've had I think a real interest in seeing the Rohingya community speaking directly to us as well. And then just this afternoon we've seen from art and exhibitions some sort of insight into the lives of the Rohingya as it is now. So I believe it's been a really quite extraordinary event, really, and I think parts of it have been very moving. I noticed that that there's obviously anger as well about the conditions, and obviously particularly about the political situation with regard to Myanmar as well. That I think that was obviously expressed quite diplomatically, even by so I hope that this conference really has an opportunity to air many points of views, keep the Rohingya crisis on the agenda, both for academics, but I think also hopefully in the public perception, in politics as well, and as we've seen from this afternoon, also we have engagement from the media too. And for this is obviously built around a project that UCL and Dhaka University with other partners have been pursuing, funded by the British Academy and the Royal Society of London. And I think that this is also a continuation point. We've got quite a way to go with these projects still, but I think that we have I think built teams and partnerships and friendships, and it is important, I think, to try and continue this work, this research, this engagement with the public, this engagement with the Rohingya community, and obviously trying to make to influence policymakers as well, and inform policymakers too about our understanding, our analysis of the situation. So I think that it's looking back, how we started, we had an excellent introduction from the British High Commissioner to Bangladesh. We had a discussion of actually, the new challenges of COVID-19 in the camps. We looked at natural hazards perspectives. We then looked around to see case studies from other countries, such as India, Malaysia, and Saudi Arabia. And we had a very interesting session with activists on human rights and perspectives, and refugee advocacy perspectives. And then today, we had a panel discussion on the Rohingya crisis in relation particularly to Bangladesh. And obviously Bangladesh is the most impacted country by the Rohingya crisis. We welcomed Rohingya activists to hear directly from them about their points of view and about their concerns. And then we had an interesting discussion concerning the International Courts of Justice and those issues, and of course joined by leading people such as the Canadian High Commissioner. and then concluding this afternoon, a really excellent, moving photographic exhibition, documentary film, and engagement of the arts, looking at the Rohingya crisis. And so I think it is very fitting and really honoured, of course, that actually this conference will now be closed by Her Excellency, the High Commissioner for Bangladesh. And again, I think that's also an indication of the seriousness that of this issue, and how uppermost in mind it is the Bangladesh government. But also, I think I think the UK government, the Canadian government, other governments are supportive of this, and I think we need to keep it in that public eye.
Thank you, Peter. I'm not sure whether she has got into the platform.
Yes, she is here.
She's here?
Yes. You can now.
Oh, yeah, I can see her now, right? Okay. Good. So finally, finally you could manage time. Thank you. Good to see you. The High Commissioner, Her Excellency Saida Muna Tasneem. I think what we will do now, we are all waiting to listen to her understanding of things. High Commissioner Tasneem has just, I guess she can talk more on that. She did quite a big conference on the Rohingya. That too was kind of webinar it ended, but I understand a lot of British officials were involved, the parliamentarians, and so she is very much into this whole the Rohingya issue. So it's good to have you with us. And now I give floor to Her Excellency Saida Muna Tasneem, our High Commissioner, the High Commissioner for Bangladesh to the UK. It's all yours.
Thank you, Professor Imtiaz Ahmed, for inviting me here. And, particularly I would like to commend the co-chairs of this international conference, you from Bangladesh, the international, and the Center for Genocide Studies, University of Dhaka, and Professor Peter Sammons, Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction, University College London. The organizers of this conference. And I do recall with pleasure, I spoke at the first conference as well in 2019. And, I think I made a presentation there. I don't recall exactly what was the topic, but I understand today's topic is the Rohingya crisis and comparative perspectives. And even though I didn't have the pleasure of participating in the whole conference, but we understand that we've reflected on different themes. I also missed the concluding comments by the professor right there. But I would like to start my concluding comments by paying respects to Father of the Nation of Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who at the 29th UN General Assembly had said, the very struggle of Bangladesh symbolized the universal struggle for peace and justice. It was therefore only natural that Bangladesh from its very inception should stand firmly by the side of the oppressed people of the world. And this is the centenary of the Bangabandhu. The reason I recall him is because in 1972, when he assumed the charge of Prime Minister of Bangladesh, by 74, he has settled boundaries, land boundaries, river boundaries with India and with Myanmar. And in 1974, our land boundary was settled with Myanmar. In 2014, his daughter, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, took the initiative to very peacefully settle our land, our maritime boundary with Myanmar. And in fact, Bangladesh and Myanmar do not have any bilateral outstanding issues. That's why I'm saying this. Except for this particular issue that has cropped up, which was originated in Myanmar. And today, because Bangladesh is bearing the burden of this problem that was originated in Myanmar, and according to Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who at the 75th UNG has made it amply clear that the Rohingya problem, any sustainable solution, the Rohingya problem was created by Myanmar quote unquote, and any solution, sustainable solutions for the return of the Rohingyas must be found in Myanmar and not in Bangladesh. So the point I'm trying to make is that the bilateral relations between Bangladesh and Myanmar has been, reasonably good. I mean, we've never had any outstanding issues. It's not that, Myanmar is a country that with whom we have many facets of bilateral consultations or interactions like we have in India at 50 different levels, but we actually have only one forum to interact, which is the Foreign Office consultations. And in those consultations that the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina government initiated in 2009 with great enthusiasm when she first assumed office, it was clearly reflected there was a lot of goodwill between the two countries. And till today, we have settled everything. We do bilateral trade, used to do, but at the same time, this problem has actually come to that level. And, I would like to reflect a little bit also, earlier when this systematic persecution of the Rohingyas had also spilled over in Bangladesh in 1978 and also in 1992. In those two occasions, however, in both those occasions, Bangladesh and Myanmar bilaterally resolved it. And in this bilateral resolution, if you clearly recall that in 1978, Myanmar recognized them as the lawful residents of Myanmar and following their Operation Dragon King. And in 1992, recognized the Rohingyas as members of Myanmar society following the Operation Clean and Beautiful Nation. And in both cases, we resolved this bilaterally without involving the international community. However, now the Rohingya crisis has gone from bilateral to international. Why? Because when in 2017, 750,000 Rohingyas entered Bangladesh within a period of 3 years. This is an unprecedented people's movement caused by persecution, burning of houses, very, very, vivid description we can find in many of the comments by British ministers, including the Prime Minister, Right Honourable Boris Johnson, when he was Secretary of State, Foreign Secretary of the UK. And we know that this time the situation is different. When the UN Secretary General said one of the world's worst humanitarian human rights crisis, calling the Rohingya crisis, the UN fact-finding mission said that it's a pre-planned, well-coordinated, state-endorsed policy aiming at ethnic cleansing only of the Rohingya community of Myanmar with elements of genocide. These are the reasons it transformed from a bilateral problem to a multilateral problem. It became an international concern because it is currently threatening the security and stability of not only Bangladesh, but actually the entire region. And, today's topic is comparative, and I'll come to that. How did similar situations and similar refugee crises or problems were resolved, where hundreds of thousands of refugees were actually burden shared with other countries? And that isn't happening in this case. I'll come to that. But in my concluding comments, I started with, where this time also, in 2017, Bangladesh signed an arrangement of return in good faith that in last two times when they persecuted their minorities, they also took them back. So we hope that this time also they'll take them back. And the arrangement was signed, and we were preparing to repatriate them twice in 2018 and 2019, and the concerned ministries, including Foreign Ministry, made full preparation. And yet, the Rohingyas on our side, they demanded some guarantees. There were this 13 demands of the Rohingyas, where the Rohingyas demanded guarantees and credible actions by Myanmar government on their legal status, on their return, their safety, security, their equal rights and their freedoms, because they have no freedoms in Myanmar and they don't have any rights. What have we seen in the 8 November elections? Rohingyas were simply disenfranchised and they were not included. So this is a reminder that bilateral arrangement on sending Rohingyas back to Myanmar was not enough. The crisis that kept re-erupting in 78, 92, and 2016-17 would never find a sustainable solution unless the root causes of the statelessness, systematic torture, racial discrimination, and absence of rights and freedoms of Rohingyas are urgently addressed by Myanmar. Now, there, the ICJ, you're aware of that, the Gambia's case at the ICJ. And that case has clearly, it says that, there are some provisional measures And I don't want to repeat it, but the provisional measures clearly says that there's an intent of genocide, and it has specifically asked the Myanmar government not to cause serious bodily or mental harm to the members of the group. And deliberately the group conditions that, the physical destruction of their ethnic identity. And yet what do we see? We see that in November 2018, on 18 November 2020, the UN Security Council has issued a statement, 8 states led by the United Kingdom. And I'd like to read a little bit of that because, it's a reminder that how Myanmar continues to flout, despite all ICJ, despite there was this resolution at the UN General Assembly as well, which was this time it was voted by 134 countries. It was co-sponsored by the highest number of countries, nearly 110 countries. It's the highest across the board support. Latin American countries have joined, European, it's the EU OIC resolution, but the support for that continues to grow. And despite all these UN, and we know that the UN Security Council is geopolitically divided. We know that, there is no consensus on this issue. Therefore, 8 members of the council is issuing this statement. And it urges Myanmar, very clear terms, that stop the atrocities, that there's ethnic cleansing still going on in Myanmar, that the Rohingyas are still being persecuted. And, they were flouting the UN Secretary General's global call for ceasefire. So nothing was being, there's this complete sort of a ignorance and complete what should I say, flouting of international law, international standards, international urgings, calling upon. Now, why is this happening? Because the international community is not focusing on Myanmar. They're actually doing bilateral trade with Myanmar. If we get some statistics, and I can forward it to the professor, that, if you look at the last 3 years of trade figures with Myanmar of European countries, unfortunately, including the United Kingdom, it is only growing. It is growing higher. And I'm not naming countries which are from ASEAN because, obviously they have an ASEAN solidarity and they do trade. But why is it that there's this one country in the world where there's international law, there's customary law, there's, League of Nations, United Nations, Human Rights Council, but nothing is working with them? Because there is no international, I feel there's a serious lack of sincerity on part of the international community. It can't be that, there's just one country that cannot be reined in to listen and maintain standards of protecting their own minorities. On the other hand, there is tremendous pressure on Bangladesh. We're being harassed left and right as to why are we keeping the Rohingyas here and why aren't we keeping them there? Why are we moving them to Bhashanchar? Why? We are the protectors. We are protecting the Rohingyas. It is the other country, their own country, which is, offending them. They're violating them. They're torturing them, they're persecuting them. But why is the onus on Bangladesh? Why isn't the onus on Myanmar? I was given a lot of quotations, but I do want to say 1 or 2 quotations that tells the current situation. Yesterday, also there are 1,600 Rohingyas that have volunteered to sign to be moved to Bhashanchar, which is the Bangladesh government has created. And here I would like to quote Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, who had at the UN, in 2017, when she was visiting in Washington, she made a comment to US Bangladeshis. And she said, if we can feed 165 million people of Bangladesh, we can also feed an additional 500 to 700,000 Rohingyas at their time of extreme distress. If necessary, we will eat 1 meal a day and share another meal with the distressed Rohingya people. After all, we are human beings and we stand for humanity. The message that Bangladesh wants to give to the entire world right now is please engage with Myanmar. If we want, you can make Myanmar take back the Rohingyas because they belong there. If the international community wants, if there's political will, it can ensure Rohingyas the right of citizenship. And here I would like to specially mention Mr. Nigel Adams, the Minister for Asia Pacific at the Foreign Office, who had in response to Ms. Rushnara Ali, the founder chair of the all-party parliamentary group on Rohingyas at the British Parliament, had asked him a question that why is Rohingya being disenfranchised in the November 8 elections of Myanmar, and why weren't they given the right to vote? And they were forced to register as Bengalis to if they wanted to be revoked. And he gave a response to it. He said that he absolutely insisted that the Myanmar government should have given citizenship unless and until the Citizenship Act, 1982 Citizenship Act has been amended. The rights of the Rohingyas and other minorities to have freedom, rights, and voting rights, and to, the persecution will continue. So on various occasions, even Professor Imtiaz was, referring to the program that Bangladesh High Commission did at the Commonwealth. As you're aware that in the Commonwealth, we have brought the Rohingya issue. And since the 2018 London summit, the Commonwealth has given a very substantive paragraph asking for international accountability of Myanmar. And as a follow-up to that, we organized this dialogue in the Commonwealth where Lord Ahmed has mentioned, who's the Minister for South Asia, that it was nearly 3 years since the event of 2017 had happened. The scale of violence and atrocities that took place against the Rohingya, the ethnic cleansing that took place against the Rohingya in Rakhine State is no less shocking and appalling than what it was then and today. And he was part of the Security Council team that issued the November statement. But it's not a September statement, but it's not just about funding. Ultimately, the Rohingya community must be able to return to Myanmar with entirely safely and with dignity, and a commitment to civilian protection. And the cessation of hostilities are vital for all sides. So at the end of the day, the British government's position is also very clear. And Nigel Adams' response, let me just say it, that he said that we are clear that 1982 citizenship law is deeply flawed and enables the exclusion of Rohingyas and other minorities on spurious grounds. The Rohingya who have lived in Myanmar for a generation should be granted full citizenship and the associated rights. They should not be excluded from Myanmar's elections. This is the position of British government ministers on the Citizenship Act, the root cause of the problem. And when it came to Dominic Raab in 22 October, in a donor conference, as you know that there was this conference, he had mentioned, the Rohingya people have faced horrific brutality and were forced to flee their homes in the worst circumstances imaginable. We have taken action against the activities, architects of this systematic violence, including through sanctions, and we will continue to hold those responsible to account. But of course, our position is these sanctions are not enough. These are very inadequate sanctions. Coming back, Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, former Foreign Secretary, who's the current co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Rohingya, along with Rushnara Ali, he had mentioned that ethnic cleansing in whatever shape or form, wherever it happens, should never go unpunished. And the perpetrators of these appalling crimes must be brought to justice. There were gang rape, assaults on children, villages razed, and in northern Rakhine, mass extermination and mass deportations took place of Rohingyas. I don't want to go on quoting, but I must quote the current Right Honorable Boris Johnson, who as Foreign Secretary, when he visited Bangladesh and Myanmar, had mentioned that, I do not believe officials claim, because there was a claim from Myanmar that Bangladesh is delaying the return of Rohingyas. And he mentioned in response to that, he said, I do not believe officials' claims that no refugees have returned because the Bangladesh authorities have refused to return them. The Burmese authorities need to work very hard with the international agencies to overcome that real alarm that people feel about going back to Burma. I've seen nothing like it in my life. Hundreds and hundreds of villages torched. It's absolutely clear that what is needed now is some leadership, some calm leadership working with the UN agencies in Myanmar to get these people back home. The reason I've mentioned all this is because you can understand from the different kinds of comments from British ministers, and here we're discussing the issue in the United Kingdom. Here, I'd like to particularly commend the United Kingdom government for the consistent leadership at the UN Security Council as a pen holder of the Rohingya issue, and also, the issuance of this statement on 10 September, which clearly says that, it clearly says that we also call for safe, full, and unhindered humanitarian access to all vulnerable populations, and they express concern about immediate cessation of hostilities and a halt to all activities that risk fueling further escalation, including compliance with the UN Secretary General's call for global ceasefire. I would now like to, quote our State Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Shahriar Alam, and this is going to be my last quote, which is he at the 22 October donors conference, where you've heard what Dominic Raab has said. He has given a summary of where Bangladesh stands right now with the Rohingya problem. And this should be reflective of a summary of what do we expect of the international community. And he said that Myanmar has a long history of persecuting and driving away its own people, especially Rohingyas from the country, in the pretext of security operations. And this goes on. They continue to say there's security operations and they continue to persecute their minorities, which is unheard of. In no other country we have seen such precedents. This must end and must be rejected because this is not an acceptable excuse. The culture of impunity has taken a deep root in Myanmar due to the country's lack of willingness to bring the perpetrators to justice. Unfortunately, the appeasement theory that is being pursued by global community vis-a-vis Myanmar through increased bilateral trade, investment, and development assistance only encourages Myanmar to flout and emboldens Myanmar to flout the decisions of international mechanisms and continue to mass atrocities and repressive onslaughts on its very own population. This is very frustrating and also, unacceptable. In the name of unjust and unfair and unreasonable pressures are being mounted on Bangladesh, threatening its sovereignty and security. Here, I'd like to stop and go back to my, today our foreign ministry had issued a statement. In fact, our foreign secretary had come to speak in this conference yesterday, and I know that he has mentioned that the onus should not be on Bangladesh, the onus should be on Myanmar, where the solution lies. And he also mentioned that, we have been witnessing this approach, appeasement policy of international community in relation to Myanmar and only emboldening Myanmar to maintain the status quo and inflict further atrocities on its minorities. For a durable solution to this Rohingya crisis, the culture of impunity in Myanmar must be stopped by vigorously pursuing accountability and justice through the international judicial mechanisms. Here, I'd like to thank the government of Gambia. I'll also like to thank the governments of Canada and Netherlands who have joined the case of Gambia. And also the International Criminal Court, as you know, the pretrial chamber has asked for collecting evidence to the UN fact-finding mission that whether crimes against humanity and genocide have been committed on Rohingyas. We hope that all these international judicial processes will actually merge somewhere and bring results in stopping, bringing those perpetrators who had persecuted the Rohingyas to accountability. There'll be national justice given to Rohingyas of all the atrocities, which is already there in the ICJ provisional measures that Myanmar must prosecute or bring to book those people who have actually committed this atrocity. That hasn't happened. Atrocities hasn't stopped. There is no intention of Rohingyas to go back, obviously. And everything that Bangladesh will do with Rohingyas will be 100% voluntarily. If the Rohingyas don't feel they will be safe in Myanmar, how can we ask them to leave for Myanmar? But the only solution to the Rohingya problem is they must be going back to Myanmar. They are from Myanmar, they have to go back. At the end, I would like to, since this is a comparative picture that you are discussing, can we also look into the issues of how third countries' rehabilitations had happened in case of other international refugee cases? And here I'd like to particularly mention, there are 100,000 nearly Bhutanese refugees that were phase by phase repatriated to United States from Nepal. I'd like to mention that how 600,000 refugees from Syria had been accommodated in Germany and other European countries, how Bosnian refugees had been reallocated as a third country burden sharing to different 11 countries in 11 countries in Europe. And there are many instances, Iraqi refugees were taken to Saudi Arabia. My question is, why doesn't one country want to take burden sharing and do something, taking the, they want to do a third country burden sharing for the Rohingyas? International community also continues to harass Bangladesh, as if Bangladesh has committed a crime by giving protection to the Rohingyas. We are doing the noblest job of protecting a minority who's actually a subject or victim of ethnic cleansing. Their identity doesn't want to be recognized by their own state. We have given them in Bhashanchar, the 1,600 Rohingyas that have volunteered and signed up They have gone there. They've seen the island. They're extremely happy with it. They said that, there's so much congestion in Cox's Bazar that they want to do some decongestion. They want to come here. There's livelihood opportunities. There's training in Burmese language. So they're fully equipped to go back. But why are we doing this? Because with or without international community support, Bangladesh would have sheltered the Rohingyas because of our own experience in 1971. And this has been said again and again by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, that 10 million refugees went to India, but we all came back because we had a country to come back to. The Rohingyas also have a country to come back to and go back to. They must go back to Myanmar. And for that, we know what needs to be done. It's a matter of international community's political will, whether they want to have it done, whether they actually care about the Rohingyas, whether they actually want the Rohingyas to go back to Myanmar and enjoy full freedom and rights. Because if that kind of attitude is there, well, they can be rehabilitated in Bangladesh, then what is getting defeated here? International justice is getting defeated here. Accountability is getting defeated here. Double standards are getting emboldened. That should not continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, you mentioned Honorable Jeremy Corbyn's name, and he is with us actually. May I request the Labour Member of Parliament? I'm taking this opportunity to invite Honorable Jeremy Corbyn to say a few words. Mr. Corbyn, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Excellency, for that fascinating and very important contribution you've just made. As you kindly referenced me in your contribution, I did raise the issue of the Rohingya people in a special debate in Parliament recently. And as one who takes refugee issues very, very seriously all over the world, I think the case of the Rohingya is often one that is not understood and often quite simply forgotten and left out of any debate by much of the world's media. The reality is there are 1 million people who've been forced out of Myanmar, and Bangladesh is hosting 1 million refugees. No other country in the world is hosting that number of refugees. No other country in the world has provided space for such a very, very large number of people. And the purpose of my debate in Parliament was twofold. One was to draw attention to the issues facing the Rohingya people and try and put it into an historical context. And then secondly, wanting to know what political pressure was going to be put on Myanmar in this respect, because any study of the history of Myanmar would indicate the way in which different ethnic groups within the country have been treated, and in particular the Rohingya people in Rakhine State, and the sheer brutality of the army towards them, the burning of villages, the driving of people away, the huge number of reports, very credible reports of rape, of killing, and of destroying buildings and villages and forcing them into exile. And so our first concern has to be a human one, a humanitarian one. These are people that need help and support. And whilst I welcome the resources, the money that's been provided by the British government and other governments, it's not going to end now. It's not going to end anytime soon. And I think there has to be a realization that there's going to have to be a lot of resources put in for quite a long time to come. And so I do think the world must wake up to this. The problem with the media in Europe and in particular in Britain is that it obsesses itself with numbers of refugees crossing the Mediterranean, the Aegean Sea, or the Channel from France to England. Indeed, I was on a call this morning of European parliamentarians concerning the plight of unaccompanied minors in Europe and the way in which we're trying to persuade each member state of the European Union and those countries in Europe that are affiliated to the Council of Europe but not in the European Union to take an appropriate number of unaccompanied minors and other refugees into their country in order for them to be able to survive. it's an uphill task, and the levels of xenophobia against refugees are horrific. I just remind people, I'm sure nobody on this call needs reminding, refugees are people, they're human beings, they're trying to survive. They also want to make their contribution to life and contribution to the world. I've never forgotten meeting a young girl in a refugee camp on the borders of Iraq and Syria before the war in Syria. 14, her home had been burnt in a fire in the camp. She didn't get much support from anybody. Her family were in a pretty bad situation in whichever way you cared to look at it. And I just said to her, what are your ambitions? And you know what she said? I want to be a doctor to help people who are worse off than me. What a beautiful message from a refugee who is in a very bad state herself. And so let's recognize that the Rohingya are people just like all of us who want to be able to survive. So the next question is the one that Excellency was dealing with, and that is the question of the right of return to Myanmar when it is safe to do so. I can fully appreciate why Rohingya people are very reluctant to go back when there are no guarantees of their safety. There are no guarantees of their political or civic rights because of the Citizenship Act that's been passed, and they are returning themselves to a place of danger. And I want to see a much stronger declaration from the United Nations, from the countries around the world, recognizing the huge issue of Rohingya refugees, recognizing the way in which they've been systematically discriminated against legally in Myanmar, and therefore their right to return with appropriate protections. Otherwise, clearly what has happened over the last few years and all the horrors that go with it are going to simply repeat themselves. And so my purpose in raising it was to draw attention to it and to draw attention to the need for significant levels of support at the moment, in particular on health needs. The coronavirus is bad everywhere. It hits the most vulnerable the hardest. It hits the oldest, the poorest, and those with least health the hardest. And clearly, in a very crowded refugee camp like Cox's Bazar, arrangements about social distancing are almost impossible to keep, and also the danger of spreading of the virus are absolutely huge. And a vaccine, fine, good. Obviously, we want it to work, but there's got to be protection for those people. So my points are simply this, because I recognize we only have limited time. One, the world to recognize the plight of the Rohingya people and the historical abuse they've suffered. To recognize, secondly, the position Bangladesh is in because it has accepted and welcomed the Rohingya refugees, unlike, I may say, if I may say so, other countries in the region. And for European nations to recognize that, yes, there are refugee issues on the shores of Europe, but they're nothing like the numbers that Bangladesh has to face. And lastly, where is the united political pressure on Myanmar to cease the abuse of Rohingya people, guarantee them a place of safety, guarantee them civic and political rights in Myanmar, and above all, that right of return, because that surely is all that we can ask. And also, I hope that the aid extends obviously to food, obviously to medicine, but crucially, absolutely crucially, to education of girls and boys in those camps so they don't lose out. They don't spend several years in camps with getting no education whatsoever. These, to me, are absolutely crucial issues. And that's why myself and other colleagues, Afsana Begum and others, raised it in the UK Parliament and will continue to do so. I know you've had other parliamentary colleagues of mine on as well. Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm sorry I've only just come on the call, but I was doing, as I've explained to you, what I think was a very important meeting earlier on with European colleagues about unaccompanied children in Europe.
No, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
It was really good to see you. After many, in last 2 years, I couldn't get to meet him. He was very busy, but I just want to say hello. We've known each other since 2005.
And if I can take up your very kind invitation when Corona allows us to visit you at the High Commission and continue these discussions, I'd be absolutely delighted to accept your invitation.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Lovely, lovely. That's good. No, thank you, Mr. Corbyn. I think your words definitely would echo well with the Rohingyas and those who have been working on these issues for years. I'm sure some of the words were needed, as the High Commissioner was also pointing out, the lack of international communities, kind of. Uh, the context or the kind of pressure that's required on Myanmar is still negligible and almost lacking, in fact. And that's what is allowing Myanmar to do whatever it is doing. So thank you for the words, and definitely thank you, Your Excellency. Very passionate as usual. You have always been on this issue, and I'm sure the Rohingyas and those who have been working on this issue will take some of your words with them and keep them for some time so they can also start working on it. The last 2 days, just take a minute. It has been a fascinating journey in the sense we had Rohingya activists, we had policymakers, uh, incumbent policymakers, we had researchers on Rohingyas. Not to mention, we also had both social science and physical science researchers, photojournalists, documentary makers, and then we had people from the webinar allowed us to bring people from Canada, Saudi Arabia, of course, UK, Japan, India, Australia, Bangladesh, and this only shows that how complex the issue is, and at the same time the kind of attention the global community has on this particular issue. So I'm quite positive that if we can keep the momentum high, and if we can keep it in the right direction, I'm sure the justice that is so much required for the Rohingyas will come. Now, on behalf of the organizers, on behalf of Professor Peter, you want to say a word a last minute, please?
Well, just again, I mean, to thank everybody who joined us. I'm obviously particularly thanking Her Excellency, the High Commissioner. Thank you very much to Jeremy Corbyn and people for joining us in this last session. And of course, thank you again very much to Dr. Bayaz Ahmed, who organised this, along with my colleague Imtiaz Ahmed here. So I mean, it's really interesting and passionate, and I hopefully will deliver impact to policymakers in time.
Good. Thank you. Well, the next conference would be next year, and hopefully the pandemic would be over by then, and we could be meeting in London, the third one, and we will update all of you, and hope to see some of you in that, but on the third conference. And I believe there will be some developments by then. So thank you all. Good night, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. See you again. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Professor Imtiaz and Professor Peter Sammons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Could I say thank you very much for that? Is there going to be a summary of the conference released? Because obviously I wasn't at most of it, and I regret that, but it was impossible. A summary would be very, very helpful and help inform us in parliamentary debate.
Yes, we will produce a conference report, and I will send you your email in the report.
There will be.
Yes.
And the whole thing is recorded. It will be in the YouTube. So if you get some time, you can listen to some of the speakers as well.
Thank you, Professor. Yeah, that'd be very helpful. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak. I'm sorry it was a bit rushed at the end, but at least we got there.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay well.
Thank you.
Everyone, bye. I just want to,
yes.
That's it. we'll produce the conference report shortly, and I will email that report to all of you, and it would be also publicly available on our UCL IRDR website.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to all the panelists, High Commissioners, and Jeremy. Yes, we're really grateful you made it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your support. And
You're
yes,
very welcome, and thank you for organizing. Well done. Very good.
Thanks. Okay. I'm going to end the session.
Lovely.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Should the organizers stay back for a few minutes?
Yes.